All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this village board meeting to order on Monday, May 18, 2020, and ask that you please rise and join the village board in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States
of
of
America,
to the republic
to the republic
republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
under God, indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Trustee Scaletta.
Here.
Trustee Padovani.
Here.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Here.
Trustee Canty. I believe she's muted now. Trustee Canty.
Here, sorry.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Here.
Trustee Baldino.
Here.
Trustee Schwingbeck.
Here.
Trustee LaBedz.
Here.
President Hayes.
Here. First item on the agenda is the approval of our minutes from our last virtual April 27, 2020. Are there any changes or passes?
Move approval.
Second.
Motion to approve by Trustee Rosenberg, and I didn't get the second.
Me.
Trustee Baldino, thank you. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none. We'll move on then to the approval of the accounts payable. We have two sets of registers to approve tonight. The first, well, I'll just call on Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I'd move approval of the warrant register with check date of April 30th, 2020 in the amount of $2,264,527.20.
Second.
A motion by Trustee Rosenberg, second by Trustee Scaletta. Any questions or comments from the village board? Anything from the audience? Anyone who might be participating virtually? Seeing none, a roll call.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta.
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck.
Yes.
Trustee Padovani.
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Yes.
Trustee Baldino.
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz.
Yes.
Trustee Canty.
Yes.
President Hayes.
Yes. And Trustee Rosenberg, the next one.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I'd move approval of the warrant register with a check date of May 15th, 2020 in the amount of $1,234,431.14.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Rosenberg, second by Trustee Scaletta. Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta.
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Yes.
Trustee Canty.
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz.
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck.
Yes.
Trustee Baldino.
Yes.
Trustee Padovani.
Yes.
President Hayes.
Yes. Well, next we move on to our COVID-19 update for our third virtual village board meeting since the pandemic began. And it's just interesting to note that even in the midst of this crisis, life does go on. And so I very much appreciate everyone doing their drive-by graduation and birthday celebrations and really making sure that life goes on, because we will get through this eventually. Hopefully you've all seen my messages to the community on our cable station. I imagine that some of you are getting pretty tired of seeing the mayor run over and over again on the village cable channel, but we'll try to keep those fresh and updated for you with new information. But as I said in my third message to the community, we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel. And I watch the governor's press conferences every day, and we are seeing some definite progress. And so we are hopeful that we will continue to move along in the different phases of the governor's Restore Illinois plan. We're going to be talking a little bit about more of that plan later on in the agenda. But I think there is some light at the end of the tunnel. And so I do want to thank all of our residents for their voluntary compliance with all of the mandates and guidelines and the stay-at-home orders, and now in the Restore Illinois plan. It has definitely contributed greatly to advancing the cause and in flattening the curve. And so we very much appreciate all of our residents' efforts and the efforts, of course, of our healthcare providers and our first responders, all of our essential workers, and in our businesses in voluntarily complying with the governor's order. We've seen in a number of cases throughout the state, different businesses and municipalities even considering going out on their own, going rogue, as I would like to call it. And I just don't think that's the way to go. I do think we need to follow the lawful orders of those appointed over us. And so that's not to say that we won't encourage change or modifications to those orders. And so we're talking about a way of doing that later on in the agenda tonight. And so again, we just thank you to all who have contributed greatly to this effort. There's no one who's looking forward to getting into phase 3 more than me. I think my hair is longer than it's been since 1974 in my senior year in high school. And so I know we're all looking forward to haircuts and other things. Just a couple of things that the community might not be aware of. And so I just want to put out that information. One is the opening of a COVID-19 testing station, drive-up testing station at Rolling Meadows High School. And that's going to be open. It was supposed to be open Wednesday of this week. It is now going to be open Friday morning for drive-up testing for those who are exhibiting symptoms only right now. And so, and for essential workers as well. So I know a number of our residents were concerned about having a testing location in the area so that they didn't have to drive to faraway places in order to get tested. So we're very happy to have something right in our own backyard. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention was a new rule that is being, that was passed last Friday by the Illinois Department of Public Health in their rulemaking capacity. And that's to prevent businesses from going out on their own. And so they're just really stepping up their enforcement capacity, and they do have the authority now to issue tickets. It's a Class A misdemeanor to any businesses that violate the Illinois Department of Public Health rules. And so I just want to make sure that our businesses understand that there is a penalty for violating these orders, at least a $75 fine, maximum up to $2,500, and up to 1 year in prison. And so that is something that's been codified now, and the Illinois Department of Public Health will be enforcing that rule. So with no further ado, I do want to turn it over to our village manager for his COVID-19 update. Randy?
Thank you, Mayor. As noted last time, the village is fully in operation. While we don't allow walk-in traffic to village offices currently, you can make an appointment or conduct whatever business you may have via email or over the phone. All village employees are working, and while some employees' jobs allow it, they're working virtually. The majority of our employees are now back to work in the field or in the office at this point with appropriate social distancing and other safety protocols in place. We're hoping to be in a position for Village Hall to reopen to walk-in traffic in June. Some of that depends on the conditions in the state and in our region. Even though village operations are in full swing, we, along with many other organizations, are facing a significant revenue hit due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the associated shutdowns. Due to projected reductions in our sales tax, food and beverage tax, income tax, building permits, and other sources, staff has been identifying various ways to reduce and/or defer expenditures this year to offset that loss. Staff currently projects that the general fund budget for the village will end the year with a deficit of $8.5 million. Fortunately, the village has built up a strong general fund reserve of approximately $28 million by running surplus budgets for the past several years. These surplus funds were set aside to weather exactly this type of unexpected shortfall so that the village can maintain services to our community without interruption. This year's projected deficit will be made up by a portion of those reserves, as well as continued exploration of expenditure reductions and deferrals. Among other reductions, the village is currently holding off on filling several vacant positions and is deferring several planned beautification projects, including the downtown brick paver replacement program and the Evergreen mid-block crossing resurfacing project. Like the general fund, other village funds are also under significant pressure. The 2021 budget will be very challenging, and we will likely have to make many difficult decisions in order to reach a balanced budget. Staff is currently in the process also of developing our 5-year capital improvement plan. That plan will also have to reflect our new realities. We will be providing a more detailed summary of the village's financial condition in June, when the budget ceiling property tax discussion normally occurs. It'll also give us an opportunity to refine our numbers based on real revenue figures from the state from the months of April and March. That's all I have on that topic this evening.
All right, thank you, Randy. Any questions for Randy on any items he just presented? Seeing none, thank you, Randy. We will then move on to citizens to be heard. And we do have some comments from the public that were submitted in advance by email. And I would at this time call on our village clerk, Becky Hume, to read those into the record if she would.
Thank you, Mayor. There was one submission from Melissa Kerr, a resident of Arlington Heights. She writes to the board to ask them to consider setting up email addresses for every U.S. postal address in Arlington Heights to facilitate communication. She states that local government is starting to depend on people having an email address. The email address could be available for electronic versions of property tax bills, utility bills, handbills, flyers, as well as doorstep and driveway information drops.
Okay. Thank you, Becky. You always have good questions, Melissa, and so we thank you. Mr. Recklouse, do you have anything in response to that? I know it seems like a really good idea, but there are some definitely concerns associated with what she suggested.
Yeah, with the influx of people moving in and out of town and us not having any way to be aware of that, it would be very difficult to manage that number of email addresses. So, I think it would be very difficult to pull that off, but I think the fact is we are going more electronic, and there are other ways to provide electronic services, such as, people can currently, pull up their water account, and get information from our website if they sign up for it. They can sign up themselves for Arlington Alert, which is a way to receive information via text or email. So there are ways to utilize those things, but it really is incumbent upon the individual resident to provide us that information if they choose to do so. But I think Melissa's right in that we're definitely going the direction of more electronic communication.
Right. Thank you, Randy. I do note that we do have at least two individuals right now that would like to address the board under citizens to be heard. And again, these are items not on the agenda. I would just advise the individuals who are currently raising their hand, and perhaps others, that we will be talking about some other COVID-19 related items later on in the agenda. So one is a proposed resolution, and then the other is some coronavirus relief initiatives. And so if you want to talk about those items, it would be better to wait until we get to those agenda items. But I don't want to cut anybody off. And so let me call on, I see two people just dropped off, maybe because of that. So I do have one more individual who's raised their hand. That's Toby Black. Toby, are you there? You just want to unmute yourself, and just okay. As we always do, we do limit individual speaking under citizens to be heard to 3 minutes. And
Okay.
so I'll be timing from here. And Toby, please tell us what you'd like us to hear about.
Okay. I'm a new resident, July 2019. I moved into the 700 block of Highland. I have to say I love Arlington Heights, so much about it. The parks, the libraries, the neighbors I have, the downtown area, the sense of community, the pride in the community, how people really care about each other. With this being said, Thursday night, my basement flooded with sewage water. Again, last night, my basement flooded with sewage water. My happiness has quickly diminished due to the flooding of my basement. I do understand that the village has offered to cover what used to be 50% up to 75% now for the overhead pipe as a solution to the problem. It is very costly. I have several neighbors who have flooded worse than me. One gal has flooded 3 times since March. And I guess I just want to know, what is the village doing to help solve this problem? I'm learning as I talk to people, this is not a new problem. It's not going to go away. When Mayor Hayes, you say you see the light at the end of the tunnel with COVID, I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel with this flooding. And for people, it's great that you're offering money to help subsidize this one solution. However, that only takes care of the sewage problem, not the stormwater. So my question is, I'm wondering, are there plans in place? Is there a committee that either is formed or can be formed so citizens can share their frustrations?
Right. If I could just go ahead and address that very briefly, and then I'll turn it over to the village manager. You are correct that it has been a problem in the village for a number of years. We did embark on a plan to address the issues, first to identify the problem areas with input from our residents and businesses, and then hire 2 consultants for the different areas in town to come up with recommendations. The biggest problem in recent times has been coming up with funding to implement those solutions. And so we have just recently embarked on a couple of plans or solutions that we've completed. And we're in the process of embarking on some new projects now. And so we're definitely addressing these issues. I understand we're not going to be able to alleviate all of the flooding problems throughout the village, no matter what we do. And so with those words, I would just turn it over to Mr. Rackloss for an update on what happened yesterday and about what the village is doing generally.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess, first to address your question directly, this has been a major focus of the village for the past several years since the 2011 flood. We commissioned a couple of studies that did detailed modeling of the community and where we flood and came up with flood standards. And then about 3 years ago, we instituted a stormwater fee on our water bill for residents to help fund bonds to pay for stormwater improvements. We spent about $5 million last year focusing on the areas of immediately surrounding downtown, and then also in the vicinity of Cypress and Arlington Heights Road. And both of those projects were completed, again, at some expense. In 2021, we have about $8 million of projects scheduled to be completed. And we've got another, I think about $5 or $6 million after that plans that are already kind of, we know what they're capable of. They have to be kind of designed in detail. But this is very much a focus of the village. There's a lot of community discussion on this over the last 5 years, working with residents on their neighborhoods and what they're actually observing along with doing the engineering studies to see what's needed. And so, you know, each area does have serious plans, both in terms of stormwater detention, stormwater conveyance, which are the pipes underground, to look at that. We also, as you mentioned, have a program where we pay for 75% of the overhead sewers for residents that would benefit from that. That was ramped up because it's really found to be a very cost-effective way to tackle those problems in those areas. And every neighborhood is a little bit different. You can have one house that's next to another house that never floods, just because of how it's laid out, where things sit in its basement and so forth. And that's why that program is a little bit more targeted. It's just another arrow in our quiver. And so, you know, again, if you're interested, I would be happy to have someone from engineering contact. If you want to email me offline, you can find my email address on our website, your address and information, and we can tell you what may be planned in your immediate vicinity or what may be going on. As for, I was planning on making some remarks about the heavy rain activity of the past weekend as well. This was a very unique storm. The village received almost 8 inches of rain between the 15th and the 17th. By some accounts, this is probably the biggest storm or series of storm events we've had over a short period since 2013. There was a period last night where some areas received a ½ inch of rain in 15 minutes, which is a lot of rain. The village received about 120 flooding calls for service last night, including about 15 calls for basement backups. We had an 18-person response team made up of our entire sewer unit and other staff members working on the storm throughout the night last night. Fortunately, as of this afternoon, none of the basement backups appear to be due to blockages in the village's system. We try very hard to maintain our system. The majority of the calls were for street flooding events, but it's important to note that many of our streets are actually designed to flood via catch basin restrictors when the system becomes inundated. It seems counterintuitive, but these restrictors they stop collecting water in the sewers and push it onto the street. If not for these restrictors, much of the water that folks saw in the street would have backed up into residents' homes and would have been even worse than the numbers that we saw last night in terms of backups. This is particularly true of our combined sewer areas south of Northwest Highway, and that's where really much of the reported street flooding that was reported to us occurred. It also appears that the village's 2 new stormwater improvements in the downtown and Cypress areas performed as they were designed to. Our engineering and public works team, a lot of them have been here many years, and they're very familiar about how the system performs in different storms. And they said that both of these, this is exactly the type of event that normally would have completely inundated those areas that those projects serve. If you recall, we've had lobby flooding in a lot of our businesses downtown, and we didn't have any of that last night. Now we're continuing to take and respond to calls on this event and analyze the data, as we always do. And as I mentioned, we have a number of identified system improvements in various planning stages over the next couple of years. And you know, I should also point out that the village has been very aggressive at trying to obtain grants. We received about $3.4 million in grants from the state last year. Much of that is going towards stormwater projects because we identified that as a real priority for this community. So, you know, we certainly agree with Mrs. Black that this is an issue and a challenge for our community, but it's one of the very much front burner issues that we're spending our money and our time on currently.
Could I just ask a question? I appreciate all the information you shared, Randall. Thank you. As far as the deep tunnel project, or I hear the term, they waited too long to open the gates. Is there such a thing as that, where, you know, the system is on overload, and, you know, is it a timing thing? Is somebody that sits in a, you know, magic chair and says, okay, now open the gates? Or is this not?
Yeah, I've heard that as well, and you know, it's not like there's someone sitting there with a button and they like, oh, I forgot to hit the unflood button. It's not quite as simple as that. There is some work done at MWRD with the deep tunnel to kind of allow open and close it. We have not heard any word that anything was closed last night. what I had a lengthy meeting with our engineering and public works staff this afternoon, and what I was told was that the rain came down so fast that the system just simply could not convey it into the deep tunnel network fast enough. That it was a limitation of our pipes, even though we've upsized them and we've done a lot of work in these areas. There's just no system that can keep up with when you get a ½ inch of rain in 15 minutes. The system's already saturated because you've received 7.5 inches of rain the last couple of days. So there just was nowhere for that water to go because it was just completely filled. If you notice today, I mean, this is a good sign. It wasn't always true. A lot of the areas that were just completely inundated late last night are clearing now. And so that shows you that the system has caught up. But it was a lot of rain. But there are times when MWRD, they do make a decision to not open things up, but we don't have any indications or any word that was the case last night.
Another question I have, if I do choose to use, put in an overhead sewer, what if my neighbor can't afford that? And it would be beneficial for her to do it, but she can't afford it. Is my overhead sewer project going to create trouble for my neighbors?
No, not directly. No, it's one of those things. If every single house on a block was having major problems, and every single house on the block but one did something, could it cause something downstream? If you added it all up, yes. But I mean, the idea that one installation would impact another person, it's very unlikely that would happen.
With the projects that you mentioned, the upcoming projects for the future, is replacing these old pipes part of that? And how do I find out what areas where can I find out about if you call the Public Works Department at 847-368-5800, they can put you in contact with somebody, and they can go through a map and tell you kind of the whole history of your area and what's going on and what the plans are, if there are any, for your immediate area. So that's something I would definitely recommend doing, or anyone else who's listening to this meeting. If you call Public Works, they can kind of tell you what may be going on, and everyone's situation is a little bit different, why they may be experiencing issues, and our staff will work with anyone to kind of help identify those problems and make sure you have the knowledge that you need to make whatever decisions you think you need to make. Okay, and one last thing, if I may, if I'm taking too much time, just tell me.
Just your last question, if you wouldn't.
Okay, my last question. When these kind of events happen, we have all kinds of refuse, sofas and carpeting and such. There are people that, the companies take it away for them, but others of us have to put it down at the end of the driveway, and Groot is charging us, money to have that refuse taken away. These kinds of events, would it be possible for them to waive those fees?
Generally speaking, you can put out pretty much, you can put out bulk items. You can put out those items under our contract. You don't have to pay a special fee for that under our plan. This go around, the issues haven't been widespread enough to call for a kind of a special storm cleanup. Typically that's done when we have a really widespread wind event or something like that, or really widespread flooding. So far, it hasn't been widespread enough to warrant that, but we'll certainly keep an eye on that if the calls keep coming through. Unfortunately, currently, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, there is a limit of one bulk item per household. So you can put out, if you have bags of garbage, you can put out as many bags as you have, as long as everything's inside of a bag. But unfortunately, you can only put one bulk item per week. So if you have a couch, you can put a couch out, but everything else has to be bagged because of the restrictions at the waste transfer station.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Toby, thank you very much for your very good questions with that, which I think were very informative for other residents as well. So thank you. We do have one other individual for citizens to be heard, and that's George. And George, if you just identify your last name, if you would, and try to keep it at 3 minutes as well.
This is George Metropolis. Can you hear me?
We gotcha.
Okay. A follow up on Mr. Reckloff's statement. Is there anything on the website where residents could look at regarding flooding, the flooding that has occurred, either current or past flooding issues?
We do have projects on our stormwater. We do have items on the website about our stormwater projects. We do have information on our stormwater program as well. Given the calls that we're getting, it's probably going to get a little bit more front and center than it has. We've had a very big focus on COVID-19 lately, but that's something that you'll be seeing in the next couple of days. If you go to the search bar and search for stormwater, you can find information on the programs we have and some of the things that are planned.
Okay, I personally don't, but I have a good friend, a couple that moved to Arlington Heights recently, so I'll point them there. Thank you.
All right, thanks, George. And we will then move on, seeing no other individuals under citizens to be heard. We'll move on to old business, and there is none. So we'll go to the consent agenda. Are there any members of the board who wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, any members of the audience wish to remove an item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, any members of the board wish to vote on any item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
I think it was Trustee Padovani, and second was Trustee Canty. Roll call.
Trustee Padovani?
Yes.
Trustee Canty?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia? I think you're muted, Trustee Tinaglia.
Yes.
And President Hayes?
Yes. We move on then to new business, and we do have one item under new business tonight. That's the request for a land use variation to allow a motor vehicle repair / minor facility in the M1 zoning district by DPS Automotive. And they are located 855 West University Drive on the north side of Arlington Heights. I understand the petitioner, Tom Waitsman, who's the owner of DPS Automotive, is present. But first, let me go to Charles Perkins, our Director of Planning and Community Development, for his short presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to share my screen in just a moment. If you just bear with me. So DPS Automotive, this is a bit of a positive story. They started their business in Arlington Heights, expanded and moved to Wheeling, and have expanded again and are looking to move back to Arlington Heights. They do need a land use variation to move into their proposed facility at 855 West University Drive, and a couple of variations. They basically provide the auto dealers in Arlington Heights with aftermarket improvements to vehicles. 60% of their business is at the auto dealers' sites and about 40% at their proposed new location. They would have 16 employees, 12 are involved in the installation of these aftermarket products, and the remaining 4 are in their front office space, and they do have 4 company vehicles. They do need a land use variation, as I'd mentioned, because the M1, which is a manufacturing district, does not allow auto repair minor in this particular district. So the property is located at the southeast corner of University Drive and Kensington. It does abut to some single-family homes, and they are proposing to add an exterior loading door for accessing the space and bringing the vehicles into their site. They would have 16 bays in the facility. Initially, we did have some concerns about potential noise impact because a lot of auto repair facilities do have tools that make noise, but the petitioner provided information, and most of their equipment is very low noise intensive. A lot of hand tools, cordless tools, things of that nature. In addition, their proposed air compressor will be installed within a sound attenuated enclosure within the building. So it's in its own room within the building. So should minimize potential impact to anyone who lives behind the building. The petitioner did host a neighborhood meeting via Zoom at the beginning of March. And there were 2 residents that attended, not expressing any concerns over noise. At the Plan Commission hearing, there was 1 resident who had some concerns about potential noise impact, and the petitioner did invite them to see their facility. Just to put in context, these are some of the uses that would be allowed as of right in the M1 district. So obviously, some uses could be higher intensive than what is proposed, such as a tool and die shop. They are seeking a parking variation primarily due to the fact that they have 16 bays, and our parking code requires 3 spaces for each bay. In reality, they've indicated they would only have 20 vehicles per day that would be driven to the sites. There's no vehicles coming on by truck or on a flatbed truck or anything of that nature. They did conduct a parking assessment of the existing situation over 4 different days over a couple of weeks. And then projecting the new demand, it does indicate that there would still be sufficient parking on the property for this use. There are a couple of code-related issues that are being followed up with code enforcement and the property owner. Outside of this petition, this applicant is just a tenant in the building. And so both Staff Development Committee recommended approval of this request, and the Plan Commission recommended 9-0 to recommend approval. I'd be happy to leave this screen for a couple of minutes if there are any questions. Otherwise, I'll remove the screen share.
Charles, why don't you take it down now, and then we'll have Mr. Weitzman present whatever he wishes to present, and then we can open it up for questions. Mr. Weitzman?
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
We gotcha.
Great. So thank you so much for taking the time to get me in so quickly. So I think, you know, the gentleman from the Planning Commission kind of outlined exactly what we're trying to do. And again, it is a great story that we started in Arlington Heights, moved to Wheeling, now coming back to Arlington Heights. We've been searching for a building for 3 years, finally found a beautiful space and a perfect location as we service all the dealerships on Dundee Road, as well as go south, and so right by 53 is great for us. So I think the 2 things that, you know, the planning board and the 1 resident had concerns was the noise, and I made it really clear to the Planning Commission and the resident and that I want to make to you guys is that we have no interest in disrupting any residents, and if there ever is any issue with noise or any concerns, I will handle it immediately, and will never be a problem for any residents or for the village of Arlington Heights. It will only be a positive impact on the neighborhood and the building.
All right, thank you, Mr. Weitzman. Any questions from the board for either the petitioner or for Mr. Perkins? Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Weitzman, thank you for bringing your business back to Arlington Heights. We appreciate that. When you had mentioned that you were going to enclose where the compressor was going to be, how is that being done? Can you kind of describe for us what the process you're going through there?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the opposite corner of the space from our garage doors, so I guess that would be on the east, I guess that would be the northeast side of the building. We're building a 5 foot deep by 8 by 10 foot wide room where the air compressors will go inside. And then there's going to be another room in front of that where we we have like some benches set up where we would do our leather interior installation. And then that's inside the building. So you're not going to hear the air compressors right in front of it, let alone outside of the building or where the residents' houses are. So they wouldn't hear it at all.
So that compressor that's being put in that building, is it a totally enclosed type of structure, or is it open on top or anything?
It does not have a roof on the enclosure. It just has walls on it. Okay. And we've actually purchased a new air compressor just for the building. That's a rotary screw compressor, which is very, very low noise compared to a traditional like piston drive compressor that's super loud.
Okay. And I think last question is, there was a resident, her name was Terry Dolly or Dalton, mentioned that she may come by to see your building. Was she ever over there to see it?
No, the gentleman said next week, and I said, whenever you want, you can come by. I mean, we're not working in there yet. We're working at our other location, but.
No, I think she was going to visit your old location, so.
Oh, no one came to our old location.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think he wanted to see the new location. I'm not sure, but I think he wanted to see, but no one came by our current location.
I didn't know whether it was a he or a she, so I guess it's a he, so. All right. Well, thank you and good luck with your new business.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the village board? Trustee Schwingbeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Weitzman, just a couple of quick questions. In the packet, you talked about doing window tinting, some paint protection and mobile entertainment systems. Is there anything else or just those three?
No, we actually do a lot of things. We do window tint. We do clear bra, which is the paint protection film. We do vinyl wraps. We do remote starters. We do truck accessories like running boards, step tubes, tonneau covers. We do spray and bed liners. We do undercoating. We do rust proofing. We do ceramic coatings. That's about the core of our business.
Okay. Is there anything that you're looking at out in the future that would be creating any more noise?
No, our only plan, and we have our hands full, knock on wood. We're pretty much the capacity every single day. Even with this pandemic, our business came down, but now it's starting to come back up again. The only thing that I have in my sights is to add the commercial bin packages to vans, which would just be bolt-on shelving units basically that go into vans, so it wouldn't be any different. And then I also have a software company where I developed the software that dealerships use to sell accessories. And so anything in the future is more focused on that type of business and starting to grow that now that my core business is very stable.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much and appreciate you bringing your business to our town.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Trustee Scaletta.
Charles, so I've gone through all the information in the packet. Do you think that there's enough protections in there to protect the residents that live around this business?
Yes, we're comfortable with what Mr. Weitzman has said about his business, and that it's not your typical automotive repair minor where you've got brake repairs and other noisier equipment. So we feel pretty comfortable that it's probably less intensive than some of the other uses that could go in as of right.
But there's protections in there in the event that there was excessive noise coming out, right?
There are. It's difficult to enforce, and the zoning code refers to obnoxious noise or odors, and then that refers to the health code that refers to the state code. But it is difficult to enforce. If you had to take somebody to court, you have to demonstrate and show that it's kind of beyond normal noise, beyond normal business. So if somebody was making a really they were operating at 2 a.m. and it was excessive noise, that would be easier to prove and enforce versus somebody who's if they were to make some noise during the day, that would be a lot more difficult to enforce. So those standards are there, but I don't want to give the false impression that it's easy to implement an action, code enforcement action with noise and odor, because those are much more difficult to do.
Okay. We have a stellar legal team that would be able to help us with that, right, Charles?
We do. That's true.
Mr. Weitzman.
Yes, sir.
All right. So I think the biggest concern that I have as one of 9 is that you're a good neighbor, and you've stated that you're going to be a good neighbor, and I'm going to hold you to that. Okay.
Thank you very much, and you won't have to worry about me. I can assure you of that.
Fantastic. I would move approval to concur with the Plan Commission recommendation.
Second.
There's a motion by Trustee Scaletta, second by Trustee Rosenberg to approve the request, and we do have additional questions by Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. I didn't get this in quickly enough, sorry. The question I had was the operating hours. I understand it'll only be Monday through Friday and regular business hours.
Yeah, so
Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're business to business, the dealership. So we're Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. till 6 p.m. During the winter time, when we get overloaded during remote start season, we do open on Saturdays, but it's generally a half a day. Definitely never on Sundays, and not late night hours. That doesn't happen.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the audience? I see none on my screen, and so
Mayor, Trustee
Mayor,
Schwingbeck has a question.
I have a question.
Baldino.
Mayor,
I do.
Trustee
Mayor,
Schwingbeck has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Trustee Schwingbeck.
Yeah, but thank you, Mayor. Charles, I just had one question for you. In the report, I saw that you had reached out to the business owner of that building in regards to the screening issues that you wanted taken care of.
That's correct.
And you had indicated that you had sent him an email. I just wanted to know when you sent that out to them, and it sounded like they have not responded to you. So I didn't know if that was something that you just did, or has it been lingering a while?
I think there was a communication from my staff to the building owner during review of this petition when they first submitted, probably, I would guess, in March. And there has been a discussion with that property owner. And they're looking into what they can do as far as screening the dumpsters, and then also the perimeter screening between the property owners. So the requirement is for 100% deciduous, evergreen screening or a fence. And right now it's a deciduous screen. So if you go by there today, it looks fairly thick because everything's leafed out now. But in the winter, it's pretty transparent. So we're trying to look at what's the practical approach to provide that screening. Those residents may not want those existing bushes removed. You may not be able to get a fence installed. So we're working with that property owner, and we'll probably have to reach out to those residents to see, what they would prefer as a solution to meet that screening requirement.
Okay, and you're not concerned about that at all?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now did I miss anybody from the board? Seeing none. Anybody in the audience? Seeing none, we do have a motion by Trustee Scaletta, seconded by Trustee Rosenberg. All those in favor say aye.
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 Hey.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations, Mr. Weitzman. Again, welcome back to Arlington Heights, and we wish you best of luck for your business at this location. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Right, we'll move on then. There being no other new business to legal under the agenda, and we do have one item to consider tonight, and that's a resolution seeking modifications to the Restore Illinois plan to reopen businesses and resume civic activity. Let me just give you a brief history of how this came to be on the agenda tonight. As I've already said at the beginning of this meeting, it is not my intention for either this village board or our residents or businesses to defy the governor's order in any way, shape, or form. On the contrary, I think we need to follow them. But it does not mean that we can't encourage reasonable change or modifications to those orders or that plan. And so that's what the purpose of this is. There's no ulterior motive. It's not political or partisan in nature. The sole purpose in my mind, and I hope in the mind of the village board and our community as well, is to reopen a little more aggressively. And I know our businesses have been asking us to do anything we can in that regard for weeks now, if not months. And so this is one way to help them get through this crisis in a way in which they can survive and eventually prosper and again thrive. And so we're doing anything and all that we can to help our businesses in this community. And that's really my sole purpose in bringing this resolution before the board tonight. And it was my sole purpose in bringing it to the Northwest Municipal Conference last week. And I'm sure the board knows that the majority of the members of the Northwest Municipal Conference did pass this exact language in letter form that evening, and it was then sent to the governor and his office. And so just a little bit of the history about how this resolution came about and the specific language. The original version that we saw was very extreme in terms of what it requested and some of the language that it included. It did talk negatively about the governor and his plan. It mentioned the words unconstitutional and null and void, and even threatened litigation. And this resolution does not do anything of the sort. In fact, this resolution praises the governor for flattening the curve and moving us in the right direction. And it does not do anything about threatening litigation. In fact, it just encourages the governor to consider some reasonable modifications to the order to reopen some of our businesses quicker on a more aggressive time frame. And so the asks in this resolution and the resolution that was proposed to the Northwest Municipal Conference were kept to a bare minimum. And the only two asks in this resolution are, one, to modify the Restore Illinois plan to go back to the 11 emergency medical services regions that the state traditionally used to guide its statewide public health efforts, rather than the 4 regions that are included in the Restore Illinois plan. And then the second ask is to move restaurants, bars, and other businesses from phase 4 to phase 3. And that would mean our restaurants in particular could potentially open as early as the end of May, early June. And so, again, there's no political motive in my mind in terms of proposing this resolution. It is solely for the purpose of reopening quicker, still keeping in mind the metrics that the governor plan includes and the health and safety concerns as well. So I think this provides a proper balance between economics and health and safety, and I would encourage your support for this proposed resolution. The one change that I would suggest we make tonight is to take out the word immediate from the title. I know some individuals who talked to me about this resolution were concerned about the tone of that, and I don't see any problem with deleting the word immediate from the title. And so that would be the one suggestion that I would make in this proposed resolution. So any questions or comments from the village board? Trustee Scaletta.
Mayor, I wanted to get some clarification. So on the current order talks about a 30-day process to go from one to the other, if I'm not mistaken, and there was discussion at the Municipal League about it being 14 days instead of 30 days.
Well, there's a lot of criteria. Well, there's 3 criteria in the Restore Illinois plan to move to the next phases. What we tried to do with this proposed resolution was to keep it real simple so that we would take out a lot of the controversial aspects to it. So there are some municipalities that are considering a third provision in this resolution, and that is with respect to criteria number 2 in the governor's Restore Illinois plan. And I've got that plan in front of me now. And so what some of the municipalities are considering doing is addressing the second criteria in the governor's Restore Illinois plan. And that says that there shall be no overall increase in hospital admissions for COVID-19 like illness for 28 days. And some municipalities are suggesting that their resolutions decrease that time from 28 to 14. I felt that would just add another controversial issue that was subject to debate in this one. And so I felt that to keep it as simple as possible, we would take that out. The 14 days that is still in is the number one criteria that you've heard so much about. And that's with respect to the positivity rate, which has to be under 20% for any region to move into the next phase. And as the governor has indicated as early as this afternoon, all four of the regions in the current plan are under 20%. But it's close for the Northeast region that we are currently in. I hope that answers your question, John.
It does. I just needed some clarification because I was reading some news articles and there seemed to be a little bit of confusion over what was intended to be passed and what was passed. And I'm sure that there was a lot of discussion at the meeting that you attended, probably virtually. And so I just wanted some clarification. You know, I will say that that our businesses have been professional and responsible in operating their businesses, those that have like done the curbside. And they haven't violated the order that I've seen or that I've heard. And they've not publicly railed against the governor or insulted the governor, which I think are all positive things. And, you know, what they want to do is get their employees back to work and try and save their businesses. So I'm supportive of this measure. But I just wanted to kind of point out that, you know, if we had a bunch of businesses that were kind of going out on their own and acting rogue, I'm not so sure that I would be supportive of this because I don't know that they'd be able to handle it. But, you know, knowing the businesses that we have in town and those that are non-franchised, the owner is generally on site. I think that, you know, especially when you look at the downtown, I mean, I think most of us can identify who the owner is or the manager just because they're so actively involved. And they've been very responsible of how they've conducted their business during this very, very difficult time. And so I'm going to be supportive of this measure, to be supportive of their efforts and their responsible nature over the past 2 months. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John. Anyone else on the village board? Trustee Tinaglia.
Thanks, Tom. Am I unmuted or am I muted?
We gotcha.
Okay, good. I'm a little bit behind here with the technology. So,
You know, they do use computers in the architect world, don't they?
yeah, but I learned with pencils and pens and erasers. So, I wanted to thank you for doing that, Tom. I think the resolution you came up with was very well done. It was polite, yet it spoke what we needed to say. It took care of business. I am supportive of anything we can do for our businesses here. So I probably would have been a little more aggressive, but then maybe I would have been not as successful. So congratulations. I hope this works well. I hope our businesses hang tight and make it through these next couple of weeks.
Thanks, Jim. Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes, and thank you for bringing this forward. And I appreciate the comments from both Trustees Scaletta and Tinaglia. I agree with them. And I just want to say I would agree with your recommendation, Mayor Hayes, to remove the word immediate from the title. I think that will then brings the title in line with the tone of the rest of the resolution. So I would be supportive of that change.
Thanks, Robin. Anyone else on the village board? Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor. So first of all, Randy, I don't know if you can answer this question, but I think the difference between the 14-day and the 28-day criteria is the difference between the federal guidelines and the state guidelines. Is that your understanding, or the mayor? Is that your understanding?
To be honest with you, Trustee Baldino, I'm not sure. Mayor, I'm not sure if you're aware of that or not.
Well, I know President Trump talked about the 14 days, and Governor Pritzker was even citing President Trump on that point for many weeks. The
Okay.
Restore Illinois plan, I think, is a little bit different than what the federal government suggests.
Well, I think the main difference, and I'm not an expert in this, but I believe that the main difference between the 14-day criteria and the 28-day criteria is the 14-day criteria requires a 14-day steady decrease in all 14 days. The 28-day criteria allows for flat and decrease as long as there's not an increase. And so I don't know if that provides more explanation to the question from Trustee Scaletta or not. That was just what I understood from doing my own research and talking to people. I do want to say that I appreciate the inclusion of the first section of the resolution. I would also like to personally commend Dr. Ezike and the Department of Health for using the best medical available science and epidemiological data in helping to develop this plan. Now, the other thing was that, Randy, when you and I spoke about this thing, I asked a question about why there were only 4 health regions instead of the normal 11. I don't know if you got an answer to that, but I'm not as concerned about that anymore because I spoke with Representative Walker, and he pointed out to me that if you look at the data and if you look at the website, breaking up the 4 regions into 11 isn't going to make a substantial change in when the various districts open. So I understand that that may be a little bit counterintuitive, but because of the way the metrics are calculated, it's not going to. And, you know, Section 3 not only talks about moving restaurants into Phase 3, but it also talks about having more input from other agencies and businesses. And when I spoke to Representative Walker, he told me that they've been in constant communication with the governor's office and receiving information. And the plan itself says that they've been in touch with local officials, mayors, businesses, and anyone else who has a vested interest. And so most of item number 3, until we get to the point where it's asking about businesses to be included in Phase 3, is already being done. I think that the inclusion of opening restaurants in Phase 4 was a health-based decision. I believe that that was the correct decision based on epidemiology and medical science. And so while I think doing everything we can to help our local businesses is a priority, I think there are better ways that we can do that rather than making this resolution available to the governor when it's already been made by the Northwest Municipal Conference. So I am not supportive of this resolution, I'm sorry to say. I am in supportive of doing everything that we can to help our local businesses and residents get through this economic crisis. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Thanks, Rich. Trustee Canty.
Yeah, I want to echo the comments from Trustee Scaletta. I think the businesses in Arlington Heights have been doing tremendous work in following these orders and doing everything that they can to do things the right way. But I also echo Trustee Baldino. That, you know, Randy, when we spoke about this last week, we went kind of over it, and it seemed to make sense to me at that time to ask these questions and make these requests to the governor. My understanding is that today we got some of those questions answered about why there are the 4 regions instead of the 11 and how that actually works to the betterment of everyone in the long term. So I also believe that Dr. Ezike and the governor and their team are putting in a tremendous amount of work. And I too have spoken with Mark Walker's office to find out exactly what they've been doing, what they've been sharing on a go forward basis. So I think that we are doing the right things, and we'll hear some of them later tonight about what we can do in Arlington Heights to help our local businesses. And I think that is the right role for us to play. But at this time, I don't see the need for this resolution because I don't think that it advances the ball any further for our businesses.
All right, any further questions or comments from the village board? Anything from the audience on this agenda item? We do have one individual, Peg Lane, and Peg, you know the drill. If you would keep your comments to 3 minutes, please.
Okay. Yeah, I thank you for everybody's work on this and comments. I think that, yes, restaurants and bars and institutions have kept the rules, but that is their obligation to keep the rules. I don't think there should be rewards for doing what they're supposed to be doing, and special considerations for that. Also, the the public has been following rules for the most part around here. I haven't seen people, breaking those kind of coronavirus restrictions. So I'm against opening too soon. There should be help for people who need help, and we should be able to afford that with the other kinds of expenditures we have nationally. And so we should be able to cover this for everybody who needs help, businesses and residents.
All right, thanks, Peg. And just for clarification, this resolution would not effectuate the provisions in it in the village. This is just asking the governor to consider these modifications. And so our businesses would not be allowed to do anything different until the governor makes any modifications to his plan. So we do not have the power to reopen these businesses outside of the governor's order. Next is Jim Bertucci.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me?
We gotcha.
Okay. I would just do, I would just suggest that we do whatever we can to support the businesses. Any kind of communication that we can send to the governor's office to make them realize that some of these business owners are on the brink of some real financial difficulty would be a positive move. I understand the implications of the virus and the carefulness that we have to do as a public and to flatten the curve and all that. But I've been around small businesses since I was 13 years old. I've worked for small businesses. They helped put me through college from working for them, and I now service small businesses in my financial practice. And I think that's what our downtown has been built on. And I think we have to do whatever we can to help support them and to provide a means to get information to the governor to say, let's think outside the box, let's come up with some creative ideas. And I would suggest that our board be in full support of continuing to communicate, continuing to put pressure on the governor and the state to help us help our businesses.
Thanks, Jim. Next is Roger. Roger, if you could just give us your full name, please.
Hi, I'm Roger Hitchings. I'm up in the Terramere region. I too support this resolution. I think we need to start allowing the small businesses, the restaurants, and many of those organizations to experiment with some of their methods of how they're going to do this. I know there's a risk with experimentation, but we generally know what the ground rules are. We know what social distancing is. We have mask requirements. So I think it's very important to start considering how we're going to do this and to ask the governor to try to accelerate these as well. Secondly, I know several small manufacturing businesses that are not considered essential, but later out turned to be essential. For example, one manufactures adhesives for sewing, and they've been getting requests to ship products so that people can make masks. And they have a large facility. They have very few employees. They put the partitioning in place, and yet they're still prohibited from opening up that actually would serve a common need. So trying to put one size fits all with a restriction such as our governor's done is not very effective. I think we need to trust our business operators and some of the other folks in the community to start doing this with appropriate masks and with many of the other things. And I know this is unprecedented, but we need to learn as we go, is my thought on it. So I urge supporting this measure. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Very well said. Any other members of the audience wish to address the board on this agenda item? All right, seeing none, I'll go back to the board then to entertain a motion. And again, I would suggest that the motion delete the word immediate from the title of the proposed resolution. Trustee Scaletta?
I would move to concur with the mayor's recommendation and also remove the word immediate from the heading of the resolution.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Scaletta, seconded by Trustee Tinaglia. Any further questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, roll call.
Trustee Scaletta?
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck?
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz?
Yes.
Trustee Padovani?
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Baldino?
No.
Trustee Canty? Trustee Canty,
You're muted.
muted.
Sorry, my kids were kind of loud. I'm a no.
President Hayes?
Yes. All right, thank you for your support of this resolution. It will be sent to the governor. And we just wish our restaurants the best of luck in the days and weeks and months ahead. And just rest assured that this village board is doing all we can to help you. We'll be hearing some other initiatives in just a minute now. But again, this village board is trying to work together with you to get you through this crisis. So again, thank you for your support. We then move on in the agenda to the report of the village manager, Mr. Reckhouse.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to share my presentation here real quick. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yep.
All right. So, you know, as we mentioned before, while the village is going through its own financial difficulties, we realize how important it is to help stabilize Arlington Heights households that find themselves in risk of losing their homes and help businesses that are at risk of failing. Tonight, we're going to be reviewing and seeking direction on some options to help businesses and residents for village board's consideration. These programs reflect where we are as a village today financially and are based on our assessment of the community's needs as well. Depending on the length of the pandemic and its economic tail, we may have to revisit these projects in a few months or consider new ones. As I've said before, the key organizational watchword for the village during the COVID-19 pandemic is adaptability. Just as we've had to rethink how we provide our services completely by the phone or electronically over the past 2 months, we're going to have to consider and reconsider how best to meet the needs of our residents and businesses as well. Some of the options that we're presenting are out of the box and not fully formed. So it's a little bit different than proposals we bring to you usually. However, it would be impossible to present all of these items completely outlined. We're asking the board for the general direction and authority to proceed on these concepts, with the understanding that changes will have to be made as we go along. Some aspects of what we present may not even be possible to implement by the time we are allowed to. We don't know. Some concepts will benefit some businesses more than others. As we've said in the past, we cannot make the perfect the enemy of the good. We're going to be running through the recommended recommendations here as a whole and then revisiting each for board consideration. So we've got a handful of items to go through. So without further ado, I'm going to let Charles start off. Charles Perkins, our Director of Planning and Community Development, by introducing some of our business assistant concepts.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me?
We got you, Charles.
All right, terrific. So we've had a few meetings with the business community. We've had a couple of Zoom meetings. We've also had some one-on-one discussions. And it's sad to hear the difficulties that they are experiencing. It's also important to reiterate what the village manager mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, the village's economic situation as well. So we don't have a lot of tools or funds available. But we have identified a few things that hopefully will provide some relief for some of the businesses in the community if we can move forward and get the board's feedback on these items. The first one is a zero interest loan program. So we have $450,000 in the current zero interest loan fund right now. That is currently that program is for build out, improvements, machinery and equipment, things of that nature. And we've issued 12 loans for a total of $208,000 to date through the current program. We've identified a way of changing that program to allow it to be used more for operating costs, for rent assistance, maybe if the building owner owns the building, towards their mortgage or property taxes or things of that nature, to keep the business operating for a short period of time. Originally, we identified trying to make this money go as far as it could. So we initially proposed a $5,000 zero interest loan grant that could be paid back over a 2-year time period, not starting until 2021. After our Zoom meetings last week with the business community, several of them said they appreciated this initiative, but they felt that it wasn't sufficient to help them enough. There's been the SBA loan program. We know Cook County is talking about a program. Those have all been through a lottery. Not every business has been successful in receiving assistance. The idea behind the Villages program is that it would allow those businesses that had not received funding through some other state or federal or county program to avail themselves of this particular program. So after the discussion with the business community, we thought perhaps changing the initial amount from $5,000 to $10,000. Obviously, that means if this is very successful, instead of potentially 90 loans, we could only do 45 loans. If we had such an interest in the program, the village also would have to look at a lottery system in order to make it fair and equitable to those that were interested in applying for that. So attached to the agenda item is a draft of a potential application form, which would be modified and implemented depending upon the direction of the village board. The second thing we heard for the last 3 or 4 weeks now from our restaurant and liquor license holders are that they not only have to pay for a business license, but they also have to pay for a liquor license, and yet they can't be open. So we looked at the impact on the village's revenue as well and came up with a proposal to provide a 25% reduction to liquor license holders, those that are primarily restaurants that hold a liquor license. It would not be the packaged liquor goods like a Binny's or any other kind of liquor store, because they are continuing to be open and their business has probably improved during this pandemic. And then there are a series of deferral of fees and licenses through to September initially, and that will continue to be evaluated. So I'll pass it back to Randy, who's going to talk about the next part of the resident assistance.
Thank you, Charles. As you all know, Arlington Heights is very unique in that we have an existing program that helps residents who are suffering from a sudden financial problem, such as the loss of a job, having to flee an abusive relationship, or having recently become disabled. A lot of other towns are looking for new ways to do this through, given the COVID crisis, and we're lucky we already have a framework in place. The program that we have, just to be clear, is never been meant to be a permanent financial supplement. It's meant to help someone through a short-term temporary issue. And the program is also unique in that it's funded both by village funds and a non-for-profit called Arlington Cares, which is currently accepting donations. Typically, the village spends about $45,000 in a given year on rent assistance and other forms of assistance to this program. Since March, the village has spent about $47,000 so far. That we've helped about 40 families, totaling 106 individuals, with that money stay in their home, in their apartment for another month at least. However, at this rate, obviously, we're going to be going through our funds very quickly. We're very happy to report that through the planning department, we did receive an additional $165,000 grant from the Community Development Block Grant Program through HUD of supplemental CDBG funds. These are above and beyond what we receive with their annual allotment every year. This is something that'll be coming before the board for discussion in June, but we wanted to highlight it just so we had a sense of where we're going on the resident front, what we're going to be proposing. And again, you'll be getting this more formally over the next couple of weeks. 110,000 of that be proposed to be allocated to supplement the Emergency Assistance Fund, and then have another 54,000 kind of held to be allocated to other services that are in need in the community, as well as the counseling subsidy program, which is also seeing pressure in today's environment. Other things that we've done for residents at this time is we've refunded about $197,000 in unused parking permits, which is considerable. And that's all money in the pocket for those folks not using that. We've also stepped back on enforcing penalties for water billing. We're trying to be a little bit sensitive to people's financial strains, and that's been estimated at a loss of about $37,000. As I mentioned before, we're going to continue to look for ways to help people. There's a couple of other ideas that have been discussed that we just aren't ready to move forward in implementation just yet. But so this will be a continual discussion. With that, I'll pass things back over to Charles to talk about a very interesting idea of closing streets on Vale and Campbell to facilitate additional seating for our restaurants once they are indeed allowed to open.
Thank you, Randy. So yes, we've looked at our downtown and our restaurant and business community outside of the downtown, and it's really sad to see all these businesses struggling when so many people have worked so hard to build the community up and to build downtown to be the entertainment destination that it has been. So we looked at how can business community when the governor does allow businesses to reopen. We're anticipating that they would be allowed to open at some point at greatly reduced capacities. Many of the restaurants downtown are individually owned. They're not large establishments, and they thrive on being able to operate at their maximum capacities. But if they can only operate at 30% capacity or 50% capacity, how can we help them continue to be successful and open their businesses up and bring more people downtown to socially engage in the right way with all the standards in place, but also to support the other businesses downtown. We're also concerned about how willing will the customers be going back inside the restaurant in the summer environment? Would they prefer to dine outside initially before going into the restaurant themselves? So we looked at a number of options. The one that we're recommending is a full street closure of Vale and Campbell from June 1st through August 20th, through the end of August 2020 rather, or whenever the state restrictions allow that to occur. The street closure would allow each restaurant to use the sidewalk, part of the parking lane and part of the street for a designated outdoor dining area with the tables spaced 6 feet or more apart to meet those spatial distancing standards. We also have to provide a correct way for pedestrians to walk through the downtown, and also provide emergency services. So there would be an 18-foot wide pedestrian zone down the middle of the street that would allow for ingress and egress of emergency vehicles. 9 feet of it could be a one-way walking area for pedestrians, and the other 9 feet walking in the other direction. We've explored the possibility of an open seating area at Harmony Park, where those restaurants that aren't in this zone could allow carryout to occur. There are pluses and minuses to that. As Randy mentioned, not all of these ideas have been fully fleshed out. We know we have to look at how that area could be cleaned and maintained and monitored, and it may be that idea doesn't work, or it starts in a small scale and has to be adjusted. The areas in front of each business, but the non-restaurants would be allowed for their customers to wait to enter those businesses. Again, we're anticipating there'll be limited capacity, so customers would have to wait before they could enter those non-restaurant establishments, or they could have outdoor sales or outdoor displays. We've also identified areas at the end of the zone, the street closure zone that we're calling Arlington Al Fresco, for curbside pickup of merchandise and things of that nature. We also know that loading and deliveries and hours also have to get worked out in conjunction with the business community and also the residents that live downtown. We did look at 3 other approaches. One is an urban island concept, which is basically you take a couple of parking spaces in front of a restaurant or a business, build a little deck over it, and allow that to be used for outdoor dining. The challenge with that is you've got vehicles, close to where people are dining. You also, with spatial distancing, you only have, you probably only get 2 tables in 1 parking space. So it's really not efficient in helping the restaurants or other businesses. We also looked at half-street closures. If you close the west half of Vale, the parking lane and the driving lane had a 1-lane northbound, for example, that still doesn't give enough space to provide enough space for both outdoor dining, outdoor social distancing, and then you've got vehicles and potentially a lot of confusion over a one-way street system. And then lastly, we have looked at the use of private parking areas, both in the downtown and in the rest of the community. And we have had some inquiries from at least 1 or 2 restaurants that have outside of the downtown that are looking at how they can use their parking area, thinking they're not going to be at full capacity, to have some outdoor dining, space the tables out. So next slide, please, Randy. So if you vision the closure of the street would be done by Public Works, it'd be a lot more secure than what was shown on that last exhibit. But the 18-foot zone down the middle, and these would be the streets. Vale from Harmony Park to Wing, and Campbell Street from Dunton to Highland. And the next exhibit shows in a little more detail. We started to identify in the blue curbside pickup zones. We've identified in parking lot E and in the parking area on Highland under the Vale Garage, areas where we may need to change parking restrictions and designations. So in parking lot E, we're thinking of removing the existing commuter parking and allowing that to be on a shorter term parking, maybe 1 or 2 hours, to allow those retailers that have by appointment only and service users that have by appointment only that could park there and then walk to the storefront. The same in the area under Highland. And then the blue areas are areas that we're starting to identify for curbside pickup zones. They would have to be signed, obviously. Restaurants could direct their customers for curbside pickup, to example, pickup zone D. That were closest to a series of restaurants would have the restaurant name and their phone number at that zone, so the customers could call for that curbside pickup because they can't get in front of those businesses or stores. And then the next exhibit shows, drilling down a little more detail, what this concept would be. So this is just the leg between Vale and Dunton. It just shows the restaurants and the retail and service uses along in this area. It shows each restaurant would have their space fenced off. They would be responsible for maintaining that. They would be responsible for, the food service, the liquor service within that area. People would not be allowed to walk in the main pedestrian area, carrying alcohol or anything of that nature. This is not meant to be a street fair like we have in the main event. This is meant to be just an environment where we can encourage customers to support their local businesses in a safe environment, meeting whatever standards that are required at the time when the order is lifted. And the next slide, Randy. And the last area that I wanted to touch upon, we did create a simple fillable application form. Restaurants such as Palm Court or others outside of the downtown will need to have some similar type of provision. In many of these cases, they need the parking to meet the minimum zoning requirements for parking. So in a short-term interim measure, parking would need to be waived. We would need to make sure the parking areas left adequate circulation on the site, adequate parking for other businesses in that property if it was a multi-tenant building, and that there were adequate barriers and seating and tables were of sufficient caliber to withstand wind and things of that nature. This is also an element that we may need to consider for non-restaurant uses as well. We're starting to see in articles in other communities, in other states that have opened up already, businesses are looking to use the outside environment to lure their customers back because it's more acceptable to provide some service outside than it is inside their establishment. And then pass it back to Randy.
Okay, so we have a series of recommendations here, and I can what I would suggest is we just for context, and then kick things back to the board for questions, comments, and then we can revisit these for votes, if that makes sense to you, Mayor.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the first one is related to the loan, and we would be requesting that the board authorize staff to expand the current zero-interest loan program to provide emergency zero-interest loans up to $10,000 in accordance with the terms outlined in the memo. Second, to reduce annual liquor license fees for all classifications other than B and BB by 25%, with all liquor license fees due by September 30th. Any business whose liquor license consists of a B or BB in addition to other liquor license classification other than T will have the amount of their liquor license fees reduced by 25%, including the Class B or Class BB. The reason why that's so convoluted is we have some restaurants that on an ancillary basis also have package sales. Since it's a small part of their business, what we wanted to do is make sure that any restaurant, their total liquor license fees would be reduced by the 25%. But again, as Charles was saying, the intent was not to reduce liquor license fees for packaged liquor stores. The other option that was kind of just brushed over was a request by restaurants to eliminate requirements for restaurants to keep their kitchens open past 9 p.m. There's no staff recommendation on this, but we did tell businesses we would put it before the board for discussion. The argument there is they're saying that they don't sell much food past that time period. Generally, they're making their money off of alcohol. Some of them may choose to keep their kitchens open, but they would like the option to be able to close their kitchens after 9 p.m. Whereas currently after, I believe, 11 p.m., they can go to a reduced menu. They'd look to close it altogether during this time period. Fourth would be directing village staff to implement a plan to permit downtown business district restaurants to utilize space in the streets as well as a public sidewalk and other locations. as limited by applicable executive orders. And use of the public space would encompass all aspects of their business for which each restaurant's licensed, including alcohol. This includes a closure to particular traffic on Vale and Campbell, as described. And last, to authorize the village manager to approve a waiver of minimum parking requirements to create outdoor dining areas for restaurants on private property for the sole purpose of permitting increased capacity while the capacity inside the restaurant is limited in accordance with the applicable executive orders. So with that, we would open things up to questions, and I certainly can put the screen back up for anyone's questions if needed.
Well, thank you, Randy and Charles. I know a lot of hard work went in to this effort by both you and other members of the team. And I will open it up to questions. Trustee Scaletta.
Mayor, can we start by separating the 0% interest loan program from the rest of the conversation? I just think that it would be helpful if we talked about that program and then we talked about the changes to the outdoor dining for restaurants.
Yeah, that's fine. That's probably a good suggestion. So let's take the first recommendation first, and let's try to get some closure on that.
Okay. So I can understand why the 0% interest loan program is going to be important to a lot of businesses, as they need to make sure that they have enough working capital to be able to pay their vendors, to be able to get more supplies. So I can appreciate the need for it. I wanted to point out a couple things and ask also a couple of questions of staff. So the first one I wanted to point out was that staff did a really nice job of really outlining the key elements of it. And the one thing that I thought was kind of important to point out is that number 7, which is the first priority, will be given to businesses that have not received COVID-19 relief loans or grants from any governmental body. So I think that that's great. That doesn't mean that no one will ever receive that has received some kind of grant, but the first priority will be given to those who have not received any kind of grant or loan. So I thought that was important. The number 10 was something that I've asked Randy some questions about, and it says the tenant should secure rent abatement / relief from their landlord or mortgage relief from their lender, or provide documentation that such request has been made. I think that it's something that should be required, not that they have to receive abatement or deferment of their rent or their mortgage, but that they've at least asked. I think that that's important to show that they've gone to their landlord and or a mortgage holder to at least make the request. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask that they've made that request. I mean, their landlord or their lender could say no, but at least they've made the request. I think that's reasonable. And I think that when I look at the small business application, so Randy, can you correct me if I'm wrong? Is there a personal guarantee of this loan?
I don't know if Charles or Robin or Tom want to talk about how that's structured.
Yes, I can touch on that. Our current loan program, there is collateral that's required. And we also do credit checks and other things, but that is an added cost as well. So under this scenario, we were kind of stripping this down to make it as simple as possible. So we would not be requiring collateral or doing the credit checks. We would be requiring that the applicant sign an agreement stating they would repay it. That doesn't guarantee that they would repay it any more than the collateral does either. So under that scenario, you would still, have an enforcement action in order to try and collect, but you wouldn't have the collateral that you're trying to collect on. So there is a higher risk than our current program with this approach. This is the same as what Cook County is looking at with their program. So in order to help the businesses as quickly as possible, that's kind of how we were thinking of it.
Okay. I understand all that, but is there somewhere on this application that's going to say that they're personally guaranteeing this loan?
I'll ask Robin if she's there to, jump in on that.
I am here. There was no plan, as I understand it, to request any sort of personal guarantee per se. I mean, we can add a statement that just says they're personal guaranteeing it, but that's just paper.
Okay. Because Randy, you and I have discussed this multiple times, and I was led to believe that there is going to be a personal guarantee.
Yeah, we can add the language indicating that there would be a personal guarantee. There was a couple of different iterations of this we were discussing internally, and that certainly can be done.
Okay, I just think that it would make our residents feel more comfortable if there's a personal guarantee, and then also probably makes sense that there's a spot for a notary to notarize the document.
Well, there would be an application. Sorry, go ahead, Robin.
I was just going to say the documents aren't fully finalized yet. We're still fine tuning them.
Mm-hmm.
So
but you're looking for,
this is good input, and certainly included in the final document if it's the will of the board.
I just think I think personal guarantee is important to make our residents comfortable and to make me comfortable. And I think having it notarized also is good to make sure, and we have notaries in the village, so that's not a problem, to get notarized documents, to make sure that we have it notarized that this is the signature of the person who is requesting the loan.
And Trustee Scaletta, if I could just add, the application is the first step. Then after they get reviewed, and if we ended up, say, had so many applications, we'd do some kind of lottery process. And after that, then each applicant would have to sign a loan agreement, and that's where personal guarantee and notary and other things like that would be on that agreement before any funds were dispersed.
Great. Do you plan to come back to us with that document for approval?
We weren't planning on bringing that back, but we can provide it.
And that's why I'm bringing up these comments now, is because when else would I bring up?
It's totally appropriate. That's why we were looking for input at this stage. So no, we'll make sure that we'll, this and any other input from the board, we'll be sure to incorporate.
Fantastic. I do think that, I want to commend staff for incorporating a lot of I like that you've identified the concept, but also, working with the board and also the small businesses to discuss this before just coming before us with kind of an outline of the program, because what we wouldn't want to do is, start going down a road and find out that this isn't going to work. So thank you to staff for the work that you've done so far. And I'll leave the remainder of my comments about the expansion of seating for later in the meeting.
Thanks, John. Yeah, let's try to close out discussion on recommendation number 1. So any other questions or comments from the board on recommendation 1 regarding the zero interest loan program? Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just have one question. You talked earlier, Randy, about increasing the loan amount from $5,000 to up to $10,000. And a loan is still a loan that has to be paid back. I think everybody understands that. So my question is, if we're going to expand the amount of money we're going to loan, can we also expand the period that businesses will be required to pay the loan back?
We can do whatever the board wants. Under this current iteration, the payback period would be 24 months, commencing in January of 2021. And we thought that was fairly generous, but we can talk about different iterations of that. That's just kind of staff's recommendation at this point.
Well, my concern is that, the businesses are talking about fees and lost revenue and having to recover. And if we're doubling the amount of the loan that they're paying back in the same amount of time, I understand that that's a generous term, but they're going to have a whole lot of demands on their resources. And so if we're going to extend the amount that they can borrow. I think it might be beneficial to our local business owners if we also extend the period where they get to pay it back.
If that's something that if that's the will of the board, we can definitely, change that.
Well, I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but I obviously think that we should, put that in there.
Trustee Tinaglia.
Randy, how many people took out these loans last year?
Charles, do you have a number on what we did last time? I mean, it was a different program then, but
yeah, I don't know exactly last year, but we've done 12 in total, probably over a 2.5, no more than 3-year time period that we've had the program. Initially, it was a lower amount, and we changed that. So our current program is up to $20,000.
Okay.
So I think last year we did 3 or 4 loans.
All right. Well, I guess my whole thought would be, let's keep this as simple as we can. It's $10,000 up to $10,000, right? It could be someone who wants 7, someone who wants 8, could be still just 5. I think Lord knows how difficult it is to get money from a bank these days, and if there's something we can do to expedite this to help out, up to $10,000, we're already doing it up to $5,000. I don't see that this is that big of a deal. I trust your judgment to make sure that it's done right. With Robin's help, come back to us with the final details of it. I suppose that makes good sense, but I just would rather not overdo this.
Thanks, Jim. Anybody else on the board on this agenda item? Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you, Mayor Hayes. Thinking about what Trustee Baldino said, I can concur with going an idea of adding an additional year for the payback period. I wouldn't certainly want to go beyond that. I wouldn't say doubling the amount from 5,000 to 10,000 means we go from 2-year payback to 4-year payback, but I think it could be a difficult recovery period, and that would be something that may be of some assistance.
Trustee Canty.
I just want to echo the comments of both Trustees LaBedz and Baldino. I think a 3-year payback period would be good. One question, Randy, and I thought I had asked you this earlier, but I saw that I had never hit send on the email. We say that they can use the loan for rent, mortgage payment, or other miscellaneous operating expenses. But then it looks like we're going to base the amount that they qualify for on the 3 months rent, 3 months commercial mortgage payment, or 3 months property tax payment. Am I misunderstanding that? Could they show some other form of need or operational expense to qualify for an amount up to $10,000?
Do you want to explain that one, Charles?
Yeah, so when we first started drafting this, we were thinking it would be kind of incentive for a business. Maybe we could match their kind of rent reduction or mortgage relief reduction. So it was kind of a bit of a hangover from that. I think the intent would be, if they're eligible, they could get up to the $10,000 loan, so long as they'd made a request for rent relief or relief from their mortgage lender. We're not going to have the time to calculate, what that number would be for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months. So I think we'd probably modify that in the agreement. Okay. Quite frankly, this is still kind of a bit of a work in progress.
Okay, that makes me feel better. I just wanted to make sure that if somebody wanted operating expenses as opposed to rent help, that there was a way for them to qualify still.
And that was the intent. It needs to be corrected a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you. Charles, does it really matter that how they use the funds? I mean, if there's a need for it, do we really need to be the watchdogs of if the fact that they haven't asked for a rent abatement, or they've made the decision to pay the rent versus other bills, and I mean, as long as there's a need for the money, does it really matter? in your opinion?
It doesn't matter. The thing we were trying to do was make sure that the businesses had explored every avenue, and that they had at least requested that. Whether they receive it or not, we know some have and some haven't, and some have just stopped paying rent because they can't afford to, and then they'll have to deal with the consequences of, with their landlord afterwards. So it was more a question of, that is when we had meetings early March with the businesses, they basically said that is one of their number one ongoing costs that they can't, get from underneath, get out from under. So we thought trying to kind of encourage them to request that relief, but it's not imperative to this program.
Well, the other point on that too was it was a little bit of a lesson learned from the emergency assistance program. If you recall, when this first started, we had a couple of landlords telling residents, you owe me rent, but I won't. You have to go get that village program to pay your rent, or else I'm going to start charging you late fees. And so we don't want this necessarily to just be a program that, is a subsidy for landlords. We want it to be able to focus on business owners as well. And so we want to make sure that they've at least made an attempt to achieve rent relief first, so that it's not necessarily going just towards that. It may go towards other expenses that would allow them to keep their business open. Because the intent is really to help the business owner, not just the landlord.
Right, because one of the things I had sent you and Tom Keeney was the fact that if they did get a PPP loan, one of the requirements of the PPP loan was that 25% of the funds had to go to pay for rent, utilities,
right,
and things of that nature. So in many cases, they actually had to pay the rent in order to get forgiveness of that loan. So that's what I'm saying. They may not have asked for forbearance of the loan or deferral because they had to pay it in order to meet that loan requirement.
No, it's true, and we are, just to be clear too, as we said before, we are prioritizing folks that did not receive federal or state assistance, and so that doesn't mean that there won't be any that receive it. That is the priority.
Right, and then I would say maybe leave the loan repayment at 24 months, but in the documentation I looked at, it said starting not till June of 21, and then it said complete repayment of the loan is expected prior to 12/31/22. Well, that doesn't even really give you enough time. That's not even 24 months. So maybe defer the loan to January 1st of 22 and start it then, and still make it quarterly or payments of, for 24 months, and you give another 6 months or 7 months deferral. And the other thing I want to mention too, it says in here that something about a promissory note may be required. So I think that gets back to what Trustee Scaletta said about the required items.
Right.
All right, anything else from the village board on this recommendation? Trustee Schwingbeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Charles, you said we already handed out 12 loans at 208, so we're only left with 240 some thousand?
No, we have 450,000 in the fund right now.
Still left? Okay.
Correct.
And can you just explain for the public, where did that money come from?
So this money came from an idea that we had a few years ago when the board asked us to explore the Class 6B applications that gives a property tax reduction to certain eligible businesses, and whether that was worthy of continuing to do and continuing to do renewals. So as part of that analysis, we proposed taking 10% of the property tax reduction savings for the first 5 years of the 12-year program, and that gets remitted to the village to go into this fund to create the zero interest loan program to help other businesses in the community. So it kind of keeps on helping. So we help a bigger business a manufacturing facility, they get a reduced rent. They provide 10% of those savings to the village over the first 5 years, goes into this fund, and that's why we're able to do this.
Okay. Yeah, and I think this is a wonderful idea, but I'm kind of in line with what Trustee Scaletta says. I think there needs to just be a little bit of oversight in these loans. I know that a lot of our businesses have been in business for many, many years, but I wouldn't want to see us loaning, you know, up to $10,000 and then all of a sudden have the business not be there 3 or 4 months from now. So I think there just has to be a little bit of question and answer with the business to see how they're doing rather than just handing out that money carte blanche.
Anybody else on the board? Seeing none, I do have 2 hands raised, and I'm going to ask just one hand now. Barb Hoffman, do you have any questions on this agenda item talking about the business loan program?
No, I don't. I don't have any
Okay, so-
questions on that. It was about the seating.
Okay, we'll hold, if you could hold off for that. And Peg, do you have any questions on this business loan program? Peg Lane? Peg, are you there?
Yes. Oh,
Okay. Any questions on the business loan program?
I was asking about residents. Can I ask about that at this point?
No, let's finish this, and then we're going to get to you. So let's kind of stick on this agenda item. We'll get back to you. All right, Randy, at this point, just some direction in terms of where we go from here. Are you guys going to refine this based on the comments that you've heard?
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably could use a little more kind of in terms of, you know, what it is that you guys want. There are a couple ideas thrown out there. I mean, we could make it 36 months, we could make it 24 months, but defer it to January of 2022. There's a couple of different things that we could do there. And so I think looking for some guidance from the board on what direction you want to go. The changes to the forms that Trustee Scaletta suggested, I don't think anyone would probably have any objections with that to clean those items up. But those are the only unresolved items. I think I'd be looking for a little bit more guidance from the board on what direction you'd like to go.
All right, well, let's try to get some consensus on the length of the program. So other than, I think there were 3 trustees who indicated 30 would prefer 3 years. Is there anyone else who would like to extend the program to 3 years? All right, I think that's your consensus, Randy, to leave it at least as 2, but we've also got Trustee Rosenberg's suggestion. So clarify that if you would.
Yeah, the Trustee Rosenberg had suggested keeping it 24 months, but not having the loan payable until January of 2022.
Any downside from you or Tom Keeney on that?
Not that I see. I don't know if Tom, do you want to chime in if you have any reservations?
No, I don't have any reservations.
The only comment I'd add is that we'd probably want it to not extend beyond any lease terms that a business may have. We probably don't want the loan to be beyond their existing lease term. So we could do a, you know, either or scenario.
Okay, any further comments on that item? Randy, does that give you enough guidance on that?
I think Trustee Rosenberg had a question there.
In answer to Charles's comment, maybe we just make it payable if at the end of the lease termination then or something. Charles, we can say if the lease doesn't extend to that, then it's all due and payable at the completion of the lease.
Sounds good.
Okay, and what was the other issue, Randy?
Trustee Scaletta had a question as well, it looks like.
Trustee Scaletta?
2 things. Trustee Rosenberg clarified at first I was against what he was saying, but then he clarified that it would be whatever comes first. So I approve that, or I agree with that. You know what? When the screen is shared, you couldn't see everybody how they, what their position was on whether for 3 years. So what ultimately happened? All I could see was the mayor and Randy and myself.
Well, I asked if anyone else besides, I think, 3 trustees wanted the 3-year term. Does anyone else want to go that long?
So I'm good with the 3 years. I couldn't.
So you're good. So
I'm
that's
one.
4.
There's 4 trustees that I believe then that are good
Yeah,
with.
so that's
3
4.
years.
Trustee Padovani's 5. So that would indicate a majority.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate the clarification because I couldn't tell where we were at.
So if we have a majority in favor of 3 years, I guess the question is, when does the 3-year payback begin? Does it begin in 2022 or does it begin in 2021?
2020, in my opinion, 2021.
I would agree with that. I was of an either or position. If you started it in 2022, then I was okay with 2 years. If we started in 2021, then 3 years. So.
And I echo that as well.
Okay. All right. Are we clear on that, Randy?
I think so.
What was the other issue?
Personal guarantee.
The personal guarantee, but I think we've worked that out. I think that'll be worked out with the subsequent documentation that'll be required of people as they get through the process. Before they're given a loan, they'll have to provide the personal guarantee, have documents notarized and so forth. And so I think we're probably, it's an issue of semantics, and we'll be able to, I think we understand the will of the board.
Okay, Robin, did you have something else?
I think that we are actually looking for a motion and a vote. I know it's a little shaky, but
well,
that we're looking for, the staff is looking for a vote to have for authorization to go ahead and use the zero interest loan plan in the way that's just been discussed. 3-year loan.
We need to summarize it. So Randy or Robin, can you have it?
Authorize staff to expand their current zero interest loan program to provide emergency zero interest loans up to $10,000 in accordance with the terms outlined in the attached memo, with loan payback beginning in January of 2021 for a 36-month term, but no longer than the current term of a business's lease. I think I captured.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Baldino, second by Trustee Canty. Trustee Rosenberg?
The only thing I would think about adding to that is the cap of the $455,000. That the zero loan interest, if you wanted to have, could say that we're only funding it to the extent of the $455,000.
I think that was, I did refer to the memo, and that was in the memo. So, but I mean, I think that based on your statement, I think that's pretty clear that that's the will.
Well, I mean, I would think Robin would want that. So, not to speak for her.
That's okay. That's the reason for referencing the memo and all these motions that are coming forward, because there's a lot of information there. So
I agree. I think it's clear.
Yep. We're good.
Right, any further questions or comments? We got a motion in a second. Do we need a roll call?
No.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Comments now on the outdoor seating plan.
If I could, Mayor, there were two. I don't know if you want to talk about the liquor license reduction and the potential elimination of requirements for restaurants to keep kitchen open before we get to the dining.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I've told Randy this. I have some concerns about this because what I don't want this area to turn into between 9 and 11 or whatever time it's open is just a big bar, big outside bar. So I would prefer to have restaurants have a limited food menu available after 9 o'clock instead of after 11 o'clock. But I don't want to totally eliminate food between 9 and closing. And those are my comments. Trustee Rosenberg.
Thank you, Mayor. I would agree with your comment about still having a certain amount of food served as far as that goes, and I have the same concern about, the whole downtown area there and the residents who live there being impacted if you have just for the most part beverage service only from 9 to 11 or whatever time. I think that's the maximum time they're allowed, and causing disruption as far as from the standpoint of noise and noise control and things like that. So otherwise, as mentioned, you're going to basically have an outdoor bar, as you refer to it. And as the governor of Wisconsin puts it, we don't want the Wild West here in Arlington Heights. So I would agree that I think there's going to have to be some controls put in to the extent of who's monitoring, the goings on downtown, and we need to have some kind of supervisory role either by the PSOs or the police department, looking at these things, and so we can control what's going on down there. So I'm not totally in favor of the 9 o'clock abatement of food and things like that.
Trustee.
So I agree with Trustee Rosenberg as well. I had written it down as one of my questions, one of my comments before we were going to break this all apart, and I just don't see the need to put this one in. I would leave it alone, leave it as is, and keep the kitchens open. Let's not turn it into the Wild West, and let's have a nice place to go.
Trustee Padovani.
I'd like to ask about the liquor license abatement. The 25% is essentially 3 months. Yeah. And with the governor's designation of restaurants being in phase 4, and it might stay in phase 4, wouldn't it seem more logical to say, if we don't want the restaurants paying for a liquor license while they're closed, why don't we tie the abatement or the percentage of abatement to the period during the period that they're closed? So it might, let's say they're closed through, God forbid, July 1st. That would be more than that, or maybe beyond that. We just abate the liquor license fees for the period that our restaurants can't make any money, and then restart the liquor licenses when they can start making money.
Well, I mean, I think that's the intent. I think we're trying to keep this legally as simple as we can, which is already proved tricky, as you can see from the way that the motion is written. I don't know if Robin, if you have any thoughts on writing in that manner, where it's essentially a formula based on the number of days closed versus doing that. I mean, I guess my one comment before turning to Robin, I would say is, I think we always can revisit this before September 30th if we want to provide additional relief, because there may be on again, off again closures. There may be a lot of things, and they are deriving some benefit from the license, and that's why we didn't eliminate it altogether. But it's I don't know if Robin wants to talk about that format.
Well, I think the challenge is that a lot of these restaurants aren't actually closed. They're open, they're just serving in a different style, and they're obviously not as busy as they would be otherwise. So you can't tie it to a closure because they're not closed, they're just serving differently. And there's been some relaxing of requirements already by the mayor's local liquor commissioner. So again, I'm not saying that they're making anywhere what they would have before, but they aren't closed. So I think the challenge is, at what point would you tie that to? Because even if they're allowed to reopen in phase 4, they're going to have reduced capacity. So I don't know that we can come up with a formula to create that. I think that this relatively complicated piece of the motion anyhow is still relatively simple to apply because it's a flat 25%.
Yeah, I don't see the word closure being in there because
it's not related to
the issue. It's not closure. They're just not able to seat people inside. They're open in the sense that they're providing takeout service, but it's nothing like what they'd have if they had some sort of opening in their dining rooms, or in this case on the street. So I don't want to get into the word closure as much as just when they are able to start serving inside and outside in seating arrangements rather than just carry out.
Add one thing too. I think when we talked about the 25% reduction, and Diana, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the liquor license is effective as of May 1st. And so that would be a May, June, and July adjustment there.
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Our liquor license fees run on a May 1st year.
Okay, so we're abating those 3 months.
Essentially, yeah, because they would have already paid for through the end of April from last year when they paid their license.
Okay, so that should take them, well, hopefully that should take them through the period when they can reopen then and start serving on a limited basis.
And again, I mean, this was an attempt to try to figure out what's a reasonable reduction. You know, we weren't trying to be precise. I mean, I don't think there's any way to make it 100% precise, but it was just what's a reasonable amount to reduce it.
Okay, so I'm okay with that then, May, June, and July. That should take us there, hopefully.
And anyone else on the board? Trustee Schwingbeck. You're on mute, Tom.
You're on mute, Tom.
Sorry about that. I certainly hear and respect what you, Mayor, and the other trustees say about the 9 o'clock. I would, and I know we've got some folks from the restaurant listening. I would like to say, though, that I think that people are going into our downtown restaurants before at 9 o'clock. They could be going in there just to have a drink anyway. So the kitchens were currently open. People that went in and maybe had an 8 o'clock or an 8:30 dinner reservation, they're eating, they're hanging around, maybe having an extra glass of wine or a drink after dinner. But I don't think there's a lot of food being served in those last couple of hours. And I know there's been restaurant owners that have talked to me over the years that have said there's not a lot of food being served. People aren't eating into those late hours, and yet we still have to keep the kitchen open. It would be nice to be able to hang around at a restaurant a little bit after 9 o'clock and have an after dinner drink and have them be able to shut those kitchens down where they don't have those expenses for the last couple of hours. So I do respect what you have to say, but it's a couple of hours, and I don't think we're going to see a big change in the way people are using those restaurants to, prior to the shutdown anyway. I don't think we're getting a lot of people going in there and hanging out those last couple of hours. They're already going in there after hours and having a drink or two. So I don't think it's going to change dramatically.
Trustee Scaletta. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I had Trustee Baldino first. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I was just going to echo exactly what Tom just said. We're thinking exactly along the same lines. What I'm thinking is that I would like us to decouple the requirement to have food past 9 o'clock with the requirement to have the kitchen open. So if a restaurant is serving, for example, packaged foods like peanuts and pretzels, that meets the requirement to have food without requiring them to have the kitchen open and pay the staff and incur all the expenses necessary to keep the kitchen open. That was just my point. I would like to try and help the businesses recover as quickly as possible, and so if we can do that and let them serve food without keeping the kitchens open, that would be great.
And I'm open to some options in terms of what a limited food menu would be after 9 o'clock. So if they can serve some kind of food item without having the kitchens open, I'm in favor of that. But I don't want to see no food after 9 o'clock.
No, I agree. I agree with that, Mayor. Thank you.
Trustee Scaletta.
So I'm wondering if when we're having this conversation, we're forgetting that if you have a full liquor license, you can be open until 2 a.m. on the weekend, right? Because that means that then they would be open for 5 more hours with no food. I mean, I think that sometimes, you know, we're reading the memo and we're thinking about 11 o'clock out on the street, but we're forgetting that they still have 3 more hours inside to be open. And so for 5 hours, they would be open, not serving any food. So I think that that is probably not, that's not the image that we were looking for in Arlington Heights. In granted, COVID is creating havoc everywhere, but I think that changing this completely to not having any food for the last 5 hours that they're open isn't in our best interest either.
Yeah, I agree. It has to be a balancing approach. Trustee Tinaglia. So
that's where I was at before when I made the comment I made. Maybe there's a compromise, maybe 10 o'clock. You know, in the summer months, it's warm out and it's light out until darn near 9 o'clock. People are eating later and they're enjoying the weekends. And so maybe the answer's in the middle. Maybe it's 10. I'm okay with anything like that.
Trustee Canty.
I just wanted to echo Trustee Schwingbeck and Trustee Baldino. I like the idea of a compromise. You know, we tend to go out late, my friends and I, in downtown Arlington Heights, when you can go out, and we don't order a lot of food when it gets to be late in the evening. But I can understand why there might be a desire to have some food option available that is less than a full operational kitchen after 9 o'clock. So I'd like to see some kind of compromise like that to save on the expense end for the businesses.
Yeah, why can't they do what they're doing after 11, after 9? Is what I'm saying. With the limited food menu.
You know, if I mean, obviously that we can do whatever the board wants, but I was going to say too, there are, I believe, some restaurant owners in our virtual audience, and they may be able to articulate some of these issues differently as well. I just was pointing that out.
Yeah, I see a couple that would probably want to weigh in on this. And so any other comments from the board before we go to the audience? All right, Barb, I assume you don't want to talk about this, do you?
No.
Okay, we'll get to you. Hold on, you're next. Okay. Chip Brooks.
You're muted.
You're on mute.
There we go. Now can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Just to keep it real brief, I think that the comments that this proposal is intended to turn Arlington Heights into the Wild West is probably not the right way to look at it. The restaurant in Arlington Heights, and this is going to shock you, we're in business to make money. We make money a lot of the time by serving food. And so the real request, there's been sort of an assumption that if the food service is only required until 9 o'clock, bars and restaurants will only serve food until 9 o'clock. That's not true at all. The restaurants in Arlington Heights are going to serve food as long as they can make $1 serving it. And, you know, some nights that's going to be 9 o'clock. Some nights that's going to be midnight. Some nights that's going to be 2 in the morning for some places. But we really want to serve whatever people are willing to buy, whatever we can make a buck doing it. And what we're really asking for is the ability to sort of make that judgment as demand dictates. And the reason for the request is, as several of the trustees have pointed out, a lot of nights, your restaurants in Arlington Heights sit around with a kitchen staff, fully staffed, but not serving anybody. It's just a cost center. And that puts your businesses at a severe disadvantage vis-a-vis businesses in other towns. But in this environment, it puts their operational continuum at a risk because it just adds a cost for which there's no corresponding income. So all we're really saying is we're happy with food as long and as late as anybody wants to buy it. It's just when there's not a demand there, let us close down those kitchens.
Thanks, Chip. Brian Roginski.
No. Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Great, great. Yes, I actually just to make it one, thank you for everything what you guys have done so far. Everything sounds great. But yes, I 100% kind of agree with what Chip just said there. And yeah, it is really just an option. But yeah, if there's a way we can kind of meet a little bit in the middle there, where at least we can have something where we can have food to give people that we really don't have to be paying a cook who's got his arms crosswise waiting, because there's just so many times that happens where, with pretzels or something to hold people over with that. We're definitely up for that. Just a way to help us save money in our kitchen. Thank you.
Brian and Chip, let me just ask you this question. After 11 o'clock now, do you send some of your kitchen people home?
Yes. Yes, we do. But we do send we cut it down. Yes, we cut it down to, to either one or two people. But that one person is from average. I mean, I'm 90% of the time after 9:30, 10 o'clock. I mean, he is actually sitting there with his arms crossed with nothing to do. And I'm just have to pay this person. And he's even looking at me being like, I want to go home. I want to go to my kids and I know I got to stay here though, but I got nothing to do.
Thank you. I'm just not comfortable with pretzels and peanuts only. And so I did think that you would be reducing your staff after 11, and we're giving you an extra 2 hours to reduce your staff, or at least I am, if you do it after 9. And so I think that's a reasonable accommodation. But any other comments from the audience on this? Larry Robotos, do you want to talk about this?
Larry, you're on mute.
How about now?
There you go.
All right, I apologize for that. No, thank you to Mayor Hayes and the entire village board. We are going on our 10th year of operating Big Shot Piano down in downtown Arlington Heights, and I concur exactly with Chip Brooks and also with Brian. We maintain our kitchen on the weekends all the way to 2 a.m. We do reduce the staff at 11, but I have 2 to 3 chefs going into the night. At 11, I will, look to let one go, but then I can at times have 1 to 2 fully trained chefs sitting back there, not doing much. So it would help us out in maintaining the costs. But once again, no intention whatsoever of just stopping food. But just giving us that option if there is no one else ordering. What we'll normally do at 11 o'clock is ask all the servers, check on their tables. Is anyone ordering any food? We will check to see if there's any type of demand at that 11 o'clock hour, just to see if we can let one of the chefs go. So, we're always maintaining that kitchen, but it would help us out immensely.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from the audience on this agenda item? Anything else from the board on this agenda item? Trustee Baldino.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. The only other thing that I would point out is this is temporary. We're not proposing that this is going to be a permanent change. I think everybody realizes that. It's just about allowing our restaurants to operate responsibly and have the freedom to maximize their revenues in the period of time where they're trying to recover. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah. Randy, is there any way that they can provide a limited food menu without having the kitchen open, and something besides peanuts and pretzels?
I think we'd have to talk to them. I don't know if this has come up in the past. I think Ms. McCula has probably walked the fine edge with restaurants and what their menu options are over the years. And so I guess I would throw it back to her to see if she knows or has any thoughts on some of the things that could be done, or if she's not prepared to talk about that at this point.
Sure, Randy, I'm prepared to talk about it. So in the past, we have indicated that the restaurants have to have a modified menu after 11 a.m. And they can do,
PM?
I'm sorry, 11 p.m. Yes. And they can do this and up until they close. So they can never say that the kitchen is closed while they're selling alcohol. And so what option we have always permitted is that they have a modified menu of a combination of hot and cold items. So we've never just permitted peanuts, pretzels, that kind of thing. So, you know, they can have a couple of dishes, a couple of their appetizers, and that has always been okay. So that is what we have consistently done in the past.
All right, John Scaletta, did you have something to add?
You're on mute, John.
All right. I did. I was just going to say that I thought a compromise would be 10 p.m. for a limited menu. You know, as mentioned by other people, I'm not giving you something that's original, but I did hear that it sounded like there might be a consensus that 10 p.m. or later, that it would be a limited menu might be acceptable to others.
All right, is everyone, well, I would be okay with 10 p.m.
Yes.
As a compromise. Trustee Tinaglia?
Yes, I agree.
Okay, so the suggestion is the kitchens could close after 10 p.m. Is that what we're talking about?
Are we saying kitchens close or have a limited like currently you have to have you can have a limited menu after 11 p.m. Are we suggesting that kitchens would close altogether at 10 p.m. or that there'd be a limited menu at 10 p.m. instead of 11?
Well, John, what was your feeling on that?
I was suggesting a limited menu starting at 10 p.m. until close. I mean, a limited menu doesn't necessarily mean that your kitchen has to be open.
Okay. The term limited menu, I think, is a weighted term in our system that typically means you have to still have your kitchen open. That's why I was curious.
Well, I'm assuming that by limited menu, we're talking about the limited menu in existence now that applies at 11 would now be permitted at 10.
Correct.
Otherwise, I would use a different term, just to clarify that this is different.
I think what we've been hearing from Brian and Chip and probably others, Larry included, is that there's a time in every evening where there's too many people standing with their arms folded. And so maybe the idea here is just move that hour up a little bit from being 11 o'clock, maybe it's 10 o'clock, maybe it's 9:30. I don't know what the right number is, but I hate the idea of, as Mayor Hayes said, I hate the idea of saying, well, yeah, we can just have peanuts and pretzels. I don't care if it's frozen pizzas. I don't care if it's salami sandwiches. Whatever we can get in our bellies after a certain period of time, great. In the meantime, we're going to help these guys out by not forcing them to pay somebody some higher salaries to stand around. So that would be my goal.
Trustee Canty.
Right, but I mean, do we really think that the restaurants in Arlington Heights are going to be willing to put out a frozen pizza? And if people aren't ordering the food, right, what's the point of having that? And I think that's what I was hearing from the restaurant owners is let them decide when it's really busy, they'll keep things open, sell the food. When people are not really ordering the food, let them close, right? Let them use their business discretion. I don't want them to suffer in quality of food just so that they can have something because for some reason we think that it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket if people can't order food when they're out having a glass of wine in the evening with their friends.
No, and I don't think that's what I was after. I was being
okay
with the salami.
okay.
And no one's selling frozen pizzas here. You got to go to Northwoods, Wisconsin for that. And I'm an expert at that, by the way.
Tombstone.
What I would say is every one of these places has, I'm sure, a couple of go-to appetizers or go-to small dishes that they could probably put together pretty inexpensively and have that as their posted limited menu like they're supposed to be doing now. And all we're talking about is giving them a break here and not carrying it on all the way till 11. At least that's what I'm feeling. So.
All right, any further comments, questions? Let's see if we can come to some consensus. I would prefer a limited menu after 9 o'clock. But it has to be more than peanuts and pretzels. What's the consensus for that?
I could get on board with that.
We got Trustee Schwingbeck, Trustee Scaletta.
I had a question, Mayor.
Canty, Trustee Tinaglia.
I had a question.
Go ahead, Trustee Rosenberg.
I was looking at 10 o'clock, so that was my mind. That was my thought.
Yeah, I think the restaurant owners had asked for 9 o'clock. I am okay with that as long as they do provide some limited menu items. And if they can do it without the kitchen open, I'm okay with that too. But it has to be more than peanuts and pretzels.
Because I just think there's a number of situations that already go on right now that when you go in a restaurant at 10 o'clock at night, they don't even serve you food. They say the kitchen's closed despite what they're supposed to do. So
yeah, they can't do that. And so
I know that.
Yeah.
But they do. So.
All right.
Well, I would just ask that folks not get fixated on the peanuts and pretzels. That was just my example, and I apologize if I gave the impression that that's what I thought was okay. But I also think it's okay if they pre-prepared a cold list of menu items and set them aside and close the kitchen early. And so, I'm okay with the 9 o'clock suggestion as long as food is available, whatever that happens to be.
Right.
I would go along with that.
Yes.
All right.
I would too.
All right. Me too. Trustee Padovani, yes.
Reasonable.
Trustee Tinaglia, Trustee Scaletta, yes. So I think we got consensus for that.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Just because, so currently the code requires a limited food menu after 11. What we're looking at doing is relaxing that requirement right now for a limited period of time. But are we looking for something different from what the limited food menu is now for after 11? I'm not clear on that.
What I'm hearing is that the board is saying yes, they aren't, whereas now the kitchen has to still be open at 11. I think, the phrase limited menu is different from what we're talking about today than what we say currently in the code, if I'm hearing the board correctly, because I'm not hearing that you all want to require that the kitchen be open necessarily, that they have to have menu items beyond peanuts and pretzels, but that don't necessarily require a kitchen to be open. I mean, is that?
Yes, food available.
Food available.
That would be correct.
So food available. So we need to come up with it. So maybe what staff needs to term for this. And, I mean, given that we in all reality aren't going to be opening till, unless the governor changes his mind till July, we can rework something and get it for the board that tries to capture the spirit of this.
Trustee LaBedz.
Thank you. I have a question about the limited menu. When we review liquor licenses, we just see their regular menu. Does Diana, do you see a limited menu? Is it actually something that's written out and they say this, and this is what we're going to serve? Or is it just sort of an understanding?
So Trustee LaBedz, I can let you and the board know that it's a limited menu, a combination of hot and cold items from their current menu. And that's what is permitted. I do not get a copy of that. In the past, I have seen a limited menu. Some, post that limited menu and have it available for their customers and say it's in effect after 11 p.m.
Okay. Thank you. So in this case, as I gather the way we're talking about it, this limited menu, now we're sort of relaxing it. This is the impression I'm getting, that they could provide a cold menu that wouldn't require cooking. So we would relax that part of this requirement. Right? The hot food that would require cooking part.
That's my understanding of the consensus.
Just want to be clear. Thank you.
Right. Mr. Brooks, did you have an additional comment on this?
Yeah, I just thought it might be useful. I'm looking at the municipal code, and the section that we're all addressing is 13-501B3. And the last sentence of that has the 11 o'clock requirement currently, and describes the menu after 11 o'clock to include a variety of sandwiches or similar foods and hot and cold non-alcoholic beverages. So there's not a requirement currently after 11 o'clock that there be hot food, just that there be some food. So I think that's kind of what you had in mind, Mayor Hayes.
Yeah, I think that helps. Thank you, Chet. And I think that's a reasonable accommodation. That gives you 2 extra hours to limit the personnel in your kitchen.
Jim can get his salami sandwich.
Right. So do we need to talk about the other part of this liquor license part?
Yes, I think, we would want some direction on that in terms of, I think there was discussion over whether, 25% or some other number, or if it's, as written is sufficient.
Any, Trustee Scaletta?
Well, I'm good with the 25%. I just had a question on the last topic. When does this go through? Or are we changing this indefinitely?
That's not my intention, and so it is temporary. And so, what is the time frame?
The recommendation would be for it to run through, the end of this, this period until such time as the restaurants can seat at full capacity, or the end of the summer outdoor seating period, which we're saying is for now the end of August.
What I would recommend we do is have the mayor issue a new liquor order, an emergency liquor order. We've gotten 2 out already. Issue another one that addresses the issue related to kitchen.
All right, sounds good to me.
And that could be,
go ahead,
and that it can be changed with 30 days notice, or are we setting an expiration? I mean, I don't know that we necessarily need, that if we set this for August 31st and we realize that this is going to go past August 31st, that we're then bringing it back up, shouldn't we leave it up to the mayor, or leave it so that it doesn't sunset until there's 30 days notice given?
We could have it sunset August 31st. The mayor could issue an emergency order that expires August 31st, and as we get closer, if we decide we want to prolong this, the mayor can just extend his emergency order.
Well, what we've done to date is the emergency orders that have been issued have been tied to the governor's orders. So you could it would probably make the most amount of sense to tie this order to the length of time, for the period of time that the restaurants have limited capacity, because that's the issue. The issue to me is that because they can't operate at full capacity, that we're trying to give them some relief. So I would think it would make the most amount of sense to tie the order to the period of time for which the restaurants are required by law to operate at less than full capacity. And then it could be revisited after that if need be.
Great. I agree with that. I just want to make sure that setting a date doesn't sound right when
I wouldn't do that.
No idea what's going to happen next week.
Correct.
Okay. That sounds good. Any other comments on the 25%?
Okay, that actually they're going to need to vote on that if they're going to reduce the liquor license fees, because that's a code requirement.
Right. Trustee Scaletta.
I would move to abate the 2020 through 2021 liquor license fees by 25%.
Second.
We want to clarify the motion as written, the reduce annual liquor license fees for all classifications other than B and BB by 25%, with all liquor license fees due by September 30th. It's the deferral part of it. any business whose liquor license consists of a B or Class BB in addition to another license other than Class T would have their total amount of their liquor license fees reduced by 25%, including the Class B or Class BB.
That's a better motion. So I'll remove my motion and make that one.
And I will second that one.
All right. That Trustee Scaletta made the motion, second by Trustee Canty. Any other questions or comments from the board on that? Roll call?
Roll call on that because we're waiving the code requirement.
Roll call. Becky?
Trustee Scaletta,
Yes.
Trustee Canty,
Yes.
Trustee LaBedz,
Yes.
Trustee Schwingbeck,
Yes.
Trustee Tinaglia,
Yes.
Trustee Padovani,
Yes.
Trustee Baldino,
Yes.
Trustee Rosenberg.
Yes.
Did I get everybody?
You forgot me.
President Hayes.
Yes. Do we need a motion on the after 9 o'clock?
That, you can have a motion if you like their concurrence. Like I said, that will come out as an emergency order. We'll issue a new order.
We need a motion on it. We've got direction.
I think the direction of the board is clear and reflected on the record, and and then the mayor has the authority to issue a liquor order accordingly.
Sounds good. All right, if nothing else then on those items, we'll move on to the outdoor seating.
Okay.
Questions on that from the board? Trustee Tinaglia.
Well, I'll try and be really quick here because it's getting late. But I wanted to thank Charles and Randy for all the work on this. I know this is a massive project, and it doesn't come easy. There's a lot of brain power here to make something like this happen. So my first comment is thanks. Second comment is I love it. I think it's a wonderful way to try to solve a pretty big problem that at least some of the businesses in town, not just the restaurants, I think we have to make sure that this is also available to the retailers around and expand it to the other parts of the community that can use their parking lots like you guys explained. So I guess I want to clarify a couple things. Number one, Randy, this plan is only for the time that the state's restrictions are involved, correct? Once they're let up, this goes away.
We were going to throw this through. We had planned on having this run through the end of August because there's obviously a weather component to this as well.
Okay, so it's really not tied to the state other than when it can open.
Right. Yeah, we can't open it until the governor gives us the green light, but we would have it run through the end of the summer. And then, at that time, if it was really going really well and we wanted to kick it another couple of weeks, we always would have the opportunity to do that. But the intention would be to have it run through a date certain.
Like Labor Day weekend or something like that.
Something like that, right.
Okay, wonderful. And then you also commented you're always going to have an 18-foot wide aisle down the center of the street for emergency vehicles and any type of issue that we might have that goes on. We need to have that space available, right?
Correct.
Great. And your hours of operation right now as planned are till when? When will these seats be closed down?
11 p.m.
11 p.m. I think that's important for the community to hear because, I'd hate to see this turn into just a big ruckus party till all hours of the night. And some folks would love that. I mean, but at the same time, there's people that live down there, so we have to be mindful of that. So I like that. Will you have overnight police or some sort of monitoring going on in this area all night long?
Yes, the police we're heavily involved in this process, and there will be, a greater police presence as needed in this whole area to make sure that, people are behaving and things are going as well as they could be. We're also looking at utilizing PSOs in this capacity as well to help kind of monitor, make sure people are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And even in the wee hours of the night, overnight, when things are closed down and people are leaving, I mean, there's a lot of investment out there with tables and chairs and potential loitering that's going to happen, right? So there'll be monitoring happening even after hours, right?
Absolutely.
Great. Two last questions and then I'll get off. It's clear in your map, you're going to have remote curbside available for some of these places that are now in an enclosed area, right?
Yes.
So like an example for Peggy, since Derek's space will be in Brian's and everybody, you can't get there with a car anymore.
Right.
And then do you have buy-in from all of these guys? Do the restaurant owners in this space, has everybody given you thoughts on whether or not they love this idea, hate this idea, or indifferent?
Very well attended virtual meeting. We had about 27 businesses or restaurants participate, and then we had a secondary one with retailers. The restaurants are more enthusiastic about it than the retailers, but the retailers, they kind of saw that there's some value to this, but it is going to benefit the restaurants more. I mean, there's no way to candy coat that, and that, that's given that it's an entertainment district. And that's been the priority. That is the focus, but we're trying to do what we can to make this beneficial to retailers as well. They know, the restaurateurs, I don't want to speak for them. They know that there will be challenges with this, and part of my opening remarks were geared towards this. We're going to have to work together to resolve some of these things. And curbside pickup is going to be more difficult. There's a couple of different ideas utilizing those zones and other parking spots to kind of have people having a place to wait that we'll continue to work with the restaurants on. And this is going to have to 100% be a partnership with our residents, with our restaurants and business owners in order to make this thing work, and we'll be problem solving as we go.
Okay, great, Randy, thanks. I'm done.
Trustee Baldino.
Thank you, Mayor. Trustee Tinaglia loves it. I love it. I think it's great. I think there's been a lot of people involved with this who deserve our thanks for putting these plans together. And Randy, you almost touched on my question. There's a lot of discussion in here that we've been given about what the plan is and how we're going to implement this. Do we have a plan in place to communicate this to our residents so that they know that this is going to happen, not just downtown, but in other restaurants around town and other retail businesses around town?
Our communications team has been involved and are aware of it, and they're already, starting to develop ways to message it. And, even as Charles pointed out, and I have to say that Charles's team put a lot, this was a multi-department effort, but Charles's team put a lot of time and effort on this. And even the naming of this at Arlington Al Fresco. So there's already been some attempts to look at branding. We did put this out prior to this meeting as the agenda was released, just to see what the reaction would be. And so far on social media, the reaction's been overwhelmingly positive.
Great. And we're going to be working with the Chamber of Commerce and the restaurants and just bombarding folks with news about this.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Mayor.
Trustee LaBedz. You're on mute.
I did so good the rest of the meeting, but when my AirPods died, I had to switch to the computer. Anyway, I think this is great. I love it. I really appreciate all the effort that's gone into this with both all of you and staff, as well as all the input from the restaurants and the businesses. I have a few questions. One of them has to do with social distancing and the fact that we have existing benches on the sidewalks. I assume that care will be taken that those will be factored in when the distances are determined between the portable tables, so as not to have people sitting too close to that, because people do sit and enjoy their yogurts and their ice creams, and even now that they pick up.
Some of the benches would be removed. I don't know if Charles, if you want to talk a little bit more in detail about that, but just to facilitate this, and given the locations, we would be removing some because they would be falling within certain restaurants' designated areas.
Yeah, that's correct. So some of the benches would be temporarily removed during this time period. If they're in the fenced zone, for example, in front of Salsa 17 and Carlos and Carlos, I think there's a bench or two there. So they would be removed, and then those restaurants would be placing their tables with the appropriate spacing. It would be the restaurant's responsibility to manage that. If there was another business that needed a bench, then that could get moved to that location. In our Zoom meeting, we did have one business that currently they don't have tables and chairs, but they do provide a product that can be eaten. So they didn't want to invest in that, fencing and tables and chairs for just a short time period. So the meeting we had was terrific. Some of the other restaurants said, we've got extra tables and chairs. We can't use them all. We're happy to donate them during this time period. So there's going to be more of that dialogue and hopefully more of that sharing amongst the businesses, whether it's our bench or one of the other businesses, tables and chairs that can work.
Okay, thank you. In terms of I just have a couple more questions. In terms of Harmony Park, the concern that I have is will there be some kind of control? I'm concerned that people will stay and loiter for long periods, and that makes it more difficult than for other patrons of other restaurants who wouldn't have a presence, wouldn't have a zone of their own, that we're talking about to have this opportunity to let people take their carry out over to Harmony Park. So I'm just concerned, and I know, Randy, you said the police have been heavily involved in this, but that there be a presence, because if somebody takes up a table or a small group takes up a table for 6 hours, there's no restaurant there to try to encourage turnover like normally happens in a restaurant, or the sort of normal kinds of turnover. So that's a concern I just want to have put out there.
If I could
go ahead.
If I could comment on that. I mean, I've heard from multiple trustees. I mean, I think the staff, as we discussed this, the part of this program we were probably least enthusiastic about was probably the Harmony Park piece. And I've heard reservations from other trustees kind of offline on that too. And so, if the board is uncomfortable with proceeding with just to speed things up, because, some of you I know have already expressed this to me, with that portion of it for now, and we could always revisit it later, that would be just fine. And the only thing I would say is that, you may have people, laying down picnic blankets and doing other things that are, that don't involve social distancing in Harmony Park, that would be more difficult to police than if we had some, heavy, park benches with tables attached that are hard to move, that would, be easier to enforce. So it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. But it is definitely one of the more difficult ones to manage conceptually than the rest of it.
And then one more question I'd like to ask. It has to do with parking, and something that was expressed to me by a non-restaurant business owner is being concerned about losing parking that's adjacent to their business. And I was thinking that the fact that there are so many fewer commuters these days, that hopefully we can have some easing maybe of where parking is available in the parking garage, that would allow, maybe in a portion of or a small portion of the permit parking area for this period of time, that could be made available to shoppers and to others down there. So that's something to think about.
Sure.
And if I could just touch on that, we've already looked at parking lot E, which is just north of Davis. So there are 54 spaces in that lot, and there's probably 2/3 of those are daily fee commuters. We were thinking of just making those customer parking shorter term, to get, not as long as 3 or 4 hours that we have in the garages, but a little shorter than that. And also for more of the curbside, quick in and out pickup. And then the same on Highland in the parking spaces that are kind of 90 degrees on Highland in the Vale Garage, similar kind of approach there.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's it.
Canty.
I just wanted to thank you guys very much for putting this together. It's tremendous. I really think it's going to be helpful. And I like hearing what you're talking about, doing some of the surface parking with a shorter time period to try and help out some of our retail businesses as well. I think that's going to be nice piece. And Randy, I also agree, maybe we revisit the tables in Harmony Park once we actually get closer to seeing this implemented and have conversations about what that would actually look like for people. I'm sensitive to what Trustee LaBedz is saying about social distancing, but I'm also mindful it's hard to get people up and off of benches. And I don't know if we want necessarily our police officers to be monitoring people's sitting time as opposed to parking time.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Scaletta.
Thank you. I probably 90% of this. I think you guys did a great job of putting it together and also incorporating our comments over the past month or so, and also reaching out to the small businesses. I think it's important to note that, when we as a board make decisions to assist our small businesses and restaurants, we're also in a way assisting our residents and the taxpayers. Small businesses generate sales tax revenue and pay a higher amount of real estate taxes and percentage of real estate taxes. And some also generate food and beverage sales tax, which are used for many, many village events, as well as Metropolis Performing Arts Center. And so I think that what we're trying to do to make sure that our businesses still succeed in this very, very difficult time, I have to commend staff. So thank you, staff. I'm really concerned about the village being responsible for setting up tables and chairs anywhere in the downtown. I am really concerned about, who's going to sanitize these surfaces, who is going to be responsible for them. And, I don't want the downtown to become a police district where the police officers are going around into these areas going, okay, you can't be over here. And we need someone over here to clean this table. I mean, I think that there's a lot of problems with having this food court concept of setting up tables and chairs in the downtown that are not being monitored and cleaned by the businesses that are going to be utilizing them. I like the idea that the businesses are going to provide the tables and chairs. I think that the village should provide all the fencing in the downtown to separate the the outdoor seating from the pedestrian walkway down the middle of the road. I think the pedestrian walkway is the best thing that's come out of this plan, in that you can't have people walking down the sidewalks in between the servers coming out of the businesses to serve the people on the street and people just trying to get to the hair salon or to the boutique to buy something. And I think that in a way, over the years, many people have suggested that the downtown streets, that we consider closing a couple of the streets and see what that would, how that would work. I think this is a great opportunity for us to try this out. And I also think that this is going to ultimately benefit a lot of our retailers in the downtown, just through the foot traffic of people just, experiencing downtown and just being outside. So I kind of wanted to start with those comments. And I think that there's a lot that still needs to be worked out. I'm eager to see how, the loading and the deliveries are going to work in the downtown, because there's a lot of trucks that go downtown to deliver, and it's already complicated and confusing sometimes, the congestion that's created when these trucks come downtown. But maybe this is going to be something that'll give us a better way for these trucks to service the businesses. I like the fact that we're still going to have some curbside pickup spots throughout the downtown, because businesses are still going to need that. Not everyone is going to embrace this concept that once the restaurant's open, that everyone's just going to flock back to them. There's a lot of people that have immune systems that, may not be able to go out, that they're very concerned about their immune system. And there's just still a lot of fear out there over this virus. And so I think that, us trying to find a way to expand the seating of the restaurants and give additional room to some of our retailers to be able to put their wares outside is a good thing. And I think that, this is forward thinking on staff's part and the village board's part. the parking in the garage is something that obviously needs to be looked at, and staff has said that they're going to be doing that. I'm just grabbing my map to see what other comments that I had on this. You know, I think that there's definitely places where there's private, it's private property that, you know, landowners are going to have to agree to let the restaurants expand onto. And when I look at the map, it's I don't want to say it's confusing, but I don't think that shared dining really reflects what all these are going to be. You know, when you have a dining area that's adjacent to a restaurant, I don't know that that's necessarily going to be shared dining. And maybe mine's cut off because I'm looking at it right now, and the yellow is shared dining and the pink is shared dining. But there's something to the right of it, and I can't see what it is on the legend. Charles, do you know what that says?
So, yeah, the pink is the potential shared dining areas on private property throughout the downtown. The kind of brownie color is kind of the individual dining areas in front of each restaurant on the street closure area. Okay. And then the kind of yellow area, which is Harmony Park, was the kind of concept that we have reservations about, having this kind of potential for public dining, unsupervised, with restaurants not in this area to allow carryout there. In our meetings, we had a lot of reservations about that. We felt leave it in for discussion, but we still have reservations, and we're hearing reservations from board members as well. So that's kind of the greeny, kind of lime green, lime yellow color area.
Sure. You know, as someone who operates a business that's going to be affected by this virus, there is a tremendous amount of work that has to be done by businesses to make sure that they're operating safely. And so I think that we definitely have a responsibility to make sure that, you know, that we're supporting their efforts to operate safely, and that we don't do anything to send a message that we're not going to be safe as well. And so I'm glad to hear that staff had reservations already. And I'm looking at this map and I'm going, oh, what about this business? What about that business? So I think that, you know, and obviously the village is bigger than just downtown Arlington. So I think that there's going to be a lot of work that still needs to be done. But I'm glad that you guys came forward with this concept, and look forward to hearing from the rest of the board, and also those that have joined the meeting virtually.
Trustee Schwingbeck.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I agree with comments made by the other trustees. Randy, I just want to say thank you for listening. I'm sure you got phone calls from all of us.